Hello. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. I am the Sauntering Spellcaster, sauntering through your mind and other places. I am continuing in my reading of the Kalevala, and I must admit, due to recent events which I hope to speak on later, I've been thinking a little bit about stories and how stories can impact people in ways that you never fully expect, you know? How stories can bring out some of the best in people if you allow them to. I don't know if anyone here has particularly been inspired by what I've done on this channel, but I would like to hope that any inspiration that I have given to the world is for the better. I hope that I can give people a healthy appreciation for adventure, that I can teach them to love life and to see how every little moment is something to be treasured. With that said, let us continue the story. Runot 19. Ilmarinen, Labors, and Betrothal. Ilmarinen, Smith Eternal, came into the house himself, underneath the favored roof. There a pot of mead was brought, tankard full of honey mead was put in Ilmarinen's hand. But he would not drink it, saying, I will never, never at all, while the golden moonlight glimmers, never will I drink these drinks, till I get my very own one. Is she ready? Ready for me? I have waited, waited long, said the mistress of Pajola. If the waiter has his worries, the awaited too has troubles. She has one shoe halfway on, and the other less than that. Your beloved will be ready, ready for your proper taking. When your plough the field of adders, turn the turf of serpent's meadow. With no movement of the plough, with no trimmer of the plowshare, long ago the demon ploughed it, and the devil furrowed it, with a plowshare made of copper, with a plow point fiery bladed. Even my poor boy, my son, left it only halfway done. Then the craftsman Ilmarinen went into his sweetheart's chamber, where he spoke of vows exchanged. Child of night, maid of twilight, do you still recall the day when I made the brand new Sampo and devised the ciphered cover? Then you swore an oath eternal in the sight of Jumala, in the face of the Almighty, promising you'd come to me, to a good and worthy man, and to be my friend forever, little chicken of my bosom. Now your mother will not yield you, will not give her daughter to me, till I plough the field of adders, turn the turf of serpent's meadow. Then his sweetheart aided him, and she gave him cunning counsel. Oho, you blacksmith Ilmarinen, you eternal hammerer, make yourself a plough of gold, artfully adorned with silver. With it plough the field of adders, turn the turf of serpent's meadow. Then the craftsman Ilmarinen put the gold into the forge, set the silver in the fire, and from these he forged a plow, hammered out iron footgear and a pair of iron leggings, and he put them on his legs, covers up his shanks with them. Then he donned his iron shirt, with blue belt he girds himself. Next he took his iron gauntlets, and he took his rock-hard mittens. Then he took his feet-foot gelding, harnessed up the good horse quickly, and went out to plow the field, went to furrow up the meadow. When he saw the snakeheads rearing, heard the hissing of the adders, he began to chant the snake charm. O you worm, you God's creation, who has raised your nose so high? Who has urged you, who exhorted, that you lift your head erect, holding up your neck so swiftly? Out of the way, slither off, streaking through the withered stubble. Weave away beneath the brushwood, undulate along the meadow. If you raise your head from there, Ukko God will crush your skull with iron hail and steely arrows. Then he plowed the field of adders, burrowed out the reptile's ground, lifted adders to the surface, snakes onto the new turfed earth. When he came from there, he said, I have plowed the field of adders, burrowed out the reptile's ground, turned the turf of serpent's field. Will you give your daughter now? Let me have my one and only? Said the dame of Pohjola, I will give my daughter to you. You may have your one and only. When you bring the bear of Tuoni, bridle up the wolf of Mana. From the wilderness of Tuoni, from behind the house of death. Hundreds have gone there to do it, but not one of them came back. Then again Smith Ilmarinen went into his sweetheart's chamber, told her what was wanted of him. What a job she's given me. Bridle up the wolf of Mana, and bring back the bear of Tuoni. From the wilderness of Tuoni, from behind the house of death. So his sweetheart aided him, as she gave him cunning counsel. Oho, you blacksmith Ilmarinen, you eternal hammerer, forge yourself a steely bit, and an iron bridle also, on a single waterstone in the foam of triple rapids. With them bring the bear of Tuoni, bridle up the wolf of Mana. Then the craftsman Ilmarinen, the eternal hammerer, hammered out a steely bit and an iron bridle ready, on a single waterstone in the foam of triple rapids. As he went to do the bridling, he implored the spirit powers. Mist-maid daughter of the fog, sift the fine mist through your sieve, sifting down the spreading fog on the haunts where game is hunted. That they do not hear me coming, do not run away before me. Got the wolf with bit in mouth, brought the bear in iron fetters, from the heath of Tuonela, from the blue haze of the backwoods. Coming back from there, he said, Woman, give me now your daughter. I have brought the bear of Tuoni, bridled up the wolf of Mana. Said the dame of Pohjola, I will give the little duckling. You may have your blue scap only. When you catch the giant scale pike, monstrous fat and agile fish, from the river of Tuonela, from the depths of Manala, without hauling up a seine, without flipping out a hand net. Hundreds have gone fishing there, but not one of them came back. By this time he felt tormented in a most precarious state. but he went in to his sweetheart. The job she orders me to do, each one better than before, now to catch the giant scalefish out of Tuoni's death-dark river, from the timeless stream of mana, without a seine, without a net, with no fishing gear at all. So his sweetheart aided him, and she gave him cunning counsel. "Oh-ho, you blacksmith Ilmarinen, don't you worry about that now. Go and forge a fire-swift eagle, hammer out a flaming griffin. You can catch the big pike with it, monstrous fat and agile fish. From the death-dark river of Tuoni, from the depths of Manala." So the craftsman Ilmarinen, the eternal hammerer, went and forged a fire-swift eagle, hammered out a flaming griffin, made the talons out of iron, and the claws he made of steel, wings as big as sides of vessels. Then he mounted on the wings, sat upon the eagle's back, on the elbow of the wing bone. When he gave the bird directions, warned the griffin of its duty. "Little eagle, precious birdling, go now, fly where I direct you, down to Tuonela's black river, to the depths of Manala. Strike the monstrous scaly fish, monstrous fat and agile fish." Then the eagle, stately bird, soared away on beating wings, searching for the scaly pike, hunting for the toothed horror, in the rivers of Tuonela, in the depths of Manala. One wing verges on the water, while the other sweeps the sky, raked the river with its talons, splashed the skerries with its beak. Then the smith began to search, to drag the river of Tuonela, while the eagle watched beside him. From the river a water demon rose to catch smith Ilmarinen, but the eagle caught the demon, caught it by the nape and twisted, trod it down beneath the water, to the black ooze at the bottom. Now appears the pike of Tuoni, upward slides the water dog. It is not so smallish small, nor so very biggish big. Tongue as long as 2 axe handles, teeth the length of 1 rake handle, gullet wide as triple rapids, back the length of 7 vessels. And it wanted Ilmarinen, was about to eat the craftsman. Came the eagle, bird of air, talons hooking for the prey. It is not so smallish small, nor so very biggish big. Beak 100 fathoms long, gullet wide as 6 great rapids, tongue the length of 6 good lances, fire size was the length of talon. It saw the monstrous scaly pike, and it pounces on that fish, lashing out it counterscaling, ripping scales from tail to head. Then the pike, the scaly monster, monstrous fat and agile fish, dives and drags the eagle downward, underneath the shining surface. But the eagle, straining skyward, soars aloft into the air, swirling up the blackish ooze, upward to the clearer waters. To and fro it flew and hovered, then it tried a second time, struck 1 talon in the shoulder, into the monster's arching backbone, struck another into a mountain, steely mountain cliff of iron. Off the rock the talon slipped, from the cliff the claw rebounded, so the awkward water monster dived and tore itself away, from the talons of the eagle, from the griffin's grasping claws. But the talons leave their marks, on the ribs and on the shoulders. Then the iron-taloned eagle makes another violent effort. With a lightning flash of wings, eyes ablaze with bright fire, Seize the big pike in its talons, and its claws the water dog. Raise the monstrous scaly pike, hauled the monster of the water, from beneath the billowy depths to the clearer surface waters. Thus the iron-taloned eagle on the third try did indeed get the scaly pike of Tuoni, monstrous fat and agile fish, from the river of Tuonela, from the depths of Manala. Water did not flow like water, choked with scalings of the big pike. Air did not smell like air, thick with feathers of the eagle. Then the iron-taloned eagle bore the monstrous scaly pike to an acorn-laden oak branch, to the top of a pollard pine. There it tasted all the savors, slit the belly of the pike, ripped the rib cage into ribbons, tore the head off out of spite. But to this the smith objected, "Oh, you miserable vulture, what sort of bird, what sort of beast, what kind of creature can you be, to have tasted all the savors, slit the belly of the pike, ripped the rib cage into ribbons, torn the head off out of spite?" But the iron-taloned eagle, angered by this, flew away, soaring up among the clouds to the shore of one long cloud bank. Clouds were scudding, sky was creaking, and the lid of heaven tilted. Broken now were the bows of Ukko and the horns from off the crescent. Ilmarinen took the fish head to his future mother-in-law as a present for her house, and he said on entering, "There's an everlasting chair for the house of good Pohjola." Then he put the question to her, "Now I've plowed the field of adders, furrowed out the reptiles' grounds, brighted up the wolves of Manala, chained the bears of Tuonela, caught the monstrous scaly pike, the monstrous fat and agile fish, from that river of Tuonela, from the depths of Manala. Will the maiden now be given? Will the girl be granted to me?" Said the mistress of Pohjola, "But you've done your job so poorly, severed the head and split the belly, even ripped the rib cage open, and you've tasted all the savors." Said the craftsman Ilmarinen, "You can't capture game undamaged, even from the best of places, let alone from Tuonela, from the depths of Manala. Is the one I yearned for ready? Ready now, the one I longed for?" Graciously the mistress answered, "She is ready, your heart's desire, ready now, the one you longed for. I must give my little duckling, and the wild duck be prepared to become the lifelong partner of the smith of Ilmarinen, to be fondled on his knee, a chicken folded in his arms." A child was sitting on the floor. From the floor it sang a song. To the halls of this fine castle came a bird, one bird too many. From the northwest flew an eagle, and across the sky a hawk. One wing touched the edge of heaven, while the other swept the waves. With his tail he brushed the sea, while his head is high in heaven. Peering, turning here and there, hovering, fluttering all about, landed on the men's great castle. With its beak it raps and raps, but the menfolk's roof is iron, so he could not get in there. Peering, turning here and there, hovering, fluttering all about, landed on the woman's castle. With its beak it raps and raps, but the woman's roof is copper, so he could not get in there. Peering, turning here and there, hovering, fluttering all about, landed on the maiden's castle, but the maiden's roof is linen, so he made his way in there. First it settled on the chimney, then it dropped down on the roof, moved aside the window board, sat upon the window-sill. Green-feathered, hundred-feathered bird on the wall where logins meet. It surveys the long-haired maidens, scanned the girls with hair unkerchiefed, for the choicest of the bevy, loveliest of the long-haired maidens, with her beaded headdress gleaming, brightest and the most adored, of the girls with garlands crowned. Then the eagle seizes her, hawkbird catches hold of her, grabs the best of all the bevy, loveliest of all the ducklings, tenderest and most charming, and the fairest of complexion. She was the one the eagle seized, and its long claw bore away. She who held her head erect, the most favored for her figure, duckling with the softest feathers, and most elegant of plumage. Said the mistress to the child, Louhi to the singing child, How did you know, lucky one, or where learn my golden apple, of the maiden growing here, how her flaxen hair was waving? Was it the glimmer of her silver, or the rumor of her gold? Was it the sunshine of our day, or the gleaming of our moonlight? Said the child from the floor, sang the baby in reply, This is how the lucky one, lucky mole, has found his way into the maiden's famous home, onto the well-kept estate. Great her father's reputation for the sailing of great ships, but her mother's fame was greater for the baking of great loaves, baking of great wheaten loaves, and her nourishing of strangers. This is how the lucky knew it, how an utter stranger learned it, that the girl child had grown up, had attained her maidenhood. Once when walking in the yard, and the yard below the storerooms, very early in the morning, very early in the dawning, he saw a rope of soot arising, and the smoke was thickly streaming over the maiden's famous home, homestead of the growing girl. She herself was grinding grain, swaying lightly on the kern staff, like a cuckoo calling the kern staff, like a wild goose sang the kern eye, while the disc cried like a bunting, and the stone like beads was clicking. Then again, as I was sauntering by the border of a field, she was in a field of bedstraw, skipping round the yellow moorland, tending pots of crimson dye, boiling pans of yellow dye. On a third time I was passing underneath the maiden's window, when I heard the sound of weaving, in her hand the batten thumping, and her shuttle quickly slipping, like a weasel through a rock pile, and the reed blades to rapping, like a pecker on a tree trunk, with the warp beam turning, like a squirrel on a tree branch. Said the mistress to the maiden, Well, well, how now, my little maid? Didn't I always warn you, not to cuckoo in the fir groves, not to sing along the valleys, not to show your neck so archly, nor the whiteness of your arms, nor the fullness of your bosom, nor any other charm of body? All this autumn I've been saying, and I sang it through the summer, even through the hurried springtime, already through the second sowing. Let us build a hidey house, with small peephole windows in it, where a girl can weave her cloth, keep the heddles softly humming, out of hearing of the suitors from the Suomi land. Said the infant from the floor, fortnight baby thus responded, Easily a horse is hidden, sheltered well the shaggy coated, but it's hard to hide a maiden, hide her long uncovered tresses. If you built a fort of stone in the middle of the ocean, there to keep your maiden safely and to raise your growing chickens, maidens will not keep in hiding, nor will virgins grow mature, without a crowd of suitors coming, courtiers from the countryside, men with high-peaked helmets on, riding on their steel-shod horses. It was then that Vanamoinen, head bowed down, depressed in spirit, pondered as he started homeward. Ah me, a worn-out man already, that I did not know it sooner. To get married in my youth, find a partner in good time. Foolishly a man regrets, who regrets an early marriage, getting children in one's vigor, setting up a family early. Vanamoinen then gave warning. The man of quiet water cautioned elders seeking maiden brides or desiring virgin beauties. He forbade them swimming races, even rowing on a wager, or competing for a bride with another, a younger man. Chapter Runot 20. The brewing of the ale. Now what will we sing about? With what song roll along? We shall sing this kind of song, with the story entertain you, of the feast of Pohjola, drinking bouts there of the godly. All was thoroughly made ready, all provided long beforehand, in the house of Pohjola and the log-built halls of Northland. What provisions did they gather? What supplies had been collected for the doings there at Northland, for the big crowd's drinking bout, serving of the country's people, and the feeding of the throng. In Karelia grew an ox, monstrous bull in Finland fattened. It was neither big nor small, just an ordinary bull-calf, and its tail swung in hame, its head swayed in Kimi River, length of horn 100 fathoms, 1.5 its muzzle thick. For a week a weasel ran round the yoke from end to end, and the flight from horn to horn took a swallow all day long. In a hurry reached its goal, without resting on the way. Squirrel of summer ran a month, from its nape to its tail end, and it did not even get there, did not make it in 1 month. It was this unwieldy bull-calf, this gigantic Finnish bullock, they escorted from Karelia to the edge of Northland's meadow. 100 pulled it by the horns, and 1,000 by the muzzle, as they guided it along, led it up to Pohjola. As the ox came lumbering on by the mouth of Sedgeland Bay, snatching hay tufts by the spring, its great backbone grazed the clouds. But there was no able striker who could kill the awesome monster, not one lad of Pohjola, even in that numerous kindred, in the rising generation, nor among the older people. And an old foreigner came forward, Verocanus the Karelian. He addressed the ox and said, "Wait, you wretched bullock, wait, till I get my mighty mallet. If I bang you with my cudgel, knock you on the skull with it, never in a second summer will you turn your snout around, swing your clumsy muzzle about, on the border of this meadow, by the mouth of Sedgeland Bay." Thus the old man moved against it. Verconus went to strike it, worshipful one to attack it. Then the bullock swung its head, with its black eyes rolling madly. Up a fir tree sprang the old man, Verocanus in a thicket, worshipful one in a willow. Now they hunted for a striker, butcher for the monster bullock, from Karelia's flowering meadows. from the wide farmlands of Finland, from the placid land of Russia, from the venturous land of Sweden, from the wayback fields of Lapland, from the magic might of Finnmark, even out of Tuonela, from Manala beneath the earth, sought him but did not find him, hunted but discovered no one. Still they hunted for a striker, went on searching for a butcher, sought him on the clear sea surface, even on the endless combers. Out of sea a man arose, dark man on a gentle sea swell, from the lucid clear sea surface, from the wide and open ocean. Though he was not of the biggest, he was not the very smallest. In a bowl he might have slept, or beneath the sieve stood upright. This one looked an old man too, but iron-handed, iron-hued. On his head a stony hat, and of shoes of stone upon his feet. In his hand a golden knife, haft with copper ornamented. Here at last it had its striker, and encountered now its killer. Finland's bull its able butcher, slayer of the country's monster. When he saw the ox he struck it hard upon the nape, forced the bullock to its knees, pinned its flank against the ground. What provisions did it yield them? Not so much, not so little, just 100 tubs of beef, sausages 100 fathoms, 7 boats with blood were laden, and 6 hogsheads tamped with tallow, for the feast of Pohjola, for the banquet there in Sedgeland. A house was built in Pohjola, a large one with mighty hall, 9 fathoms long and 7 wide. If a cock crowned on the ridgepole, on the ground they could not hear it. If a dog barked at the rear, at the door they could not hear it. There the mistress of Pohjola placed the floor to and fro, from the doorway to the center, while she puzzled and she pondered. Where now shall we get our ale? How brew the table beer aright? For the wedding we're arranging, for the party to be held here. I can't brew the table beer, not even know the birth of ale. Said an old man from the stovetop, out of barley ale was born, from the hop our famous drink. But it's not born without water, well boiled on a crackling fire. Hop the son of merry-making, stuck into the ground when small, when plowed under like an adder, tossed out like a noxious weed. By the side of Kalevala's well, on the slope of Osmo's meadow, there the little shoot came up, as a green and veiny seedling, twined around the little tree, climbed upward to the treetop. Old man Goodluck sowed his barley in the new plowed field of Osmo. There the barley sprouted nicely, and abundantly it flourished. At the end of Osmo's clearing, new field of the Kalevalander. After a little time had passed, from the tree the hop hallooed, cried the barley from the field, and the water from Kalevala's well. When will we 3 get together, when unite with one another? Living singly is so lonely, 2 or 3 together happier. Osmo's daughter, brewer of ale, and maker of the table beers, went and took the grains of barley, picked up just 6 kernels of it. Then she added 7 hop pods and 8 dipperfuls of water, put the kettle on the fire, and began to boil the mixture, and she cooked the barley beer in one hasting day of summer, on the misty point of land at the head of Foggy Island, where she put it in a tub in a new-made birchwood cask. Though the mixture was well boiled, still the brew did not ferment. Where should be put in, she wondered, what ingredient should be looked for as a quickener for the ale, starterer for the table beer. Kalevala's daughter, lovely maiden, graceful fingered and light footed, always quick in every motion, pacing where the floorboards meet, at the center of the chamber, busy with one thing or another, stepping there between two kettles, saw a splinter on the floor, picked the splinter from the floor. Looks it over, turns it over. What would come of this, I wonder, in the hand of some fair maiden, fingertips of some good virgin, if I put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin. So she put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin, with both palms, with both hands, the young maiden, that good virgin, rubbed it onto both her thighs. A white squirrel was delivered. Said the virgin to her offspring, thus advised her little squirrel, woodland creature, earth's delight in woodland flower, run now quickly where I tell you and I urge you, to the pleasant forest land, to the woods of watchful Tapio. Scamper up a little tree, slyly up a bushy-topped one, to avoid the eagle's talons, lest the bird of air should strike you. Bring some fir cones from a fir tree, and some scalings from a pine cone. Bring them to the maiden's hand, for the brew of Osmo's daughter. Well the squirrel knew its way, bushy tail to make the circuit, ran that great long distance quickly, and traversed the space between, across one forest and along another slantwise through a third, to that pleasant forest land, to the woods of watchful Tapio. There it saw 3 timber fir trees, and saw also 4 small pine trees. In a hollow climbed a fir tree, on the heath ran up a pine tree, and the eagle did not catch it, bird of air did not strike it. From the fir it broke off fir cones, from the pine some tufted needles. In its claws it hid the fir cones, in its paws it wrapped them up. Brought these to the maiden's hand, fingertips of that good virgin. Osmo's daughter gladly put them in her ale and table beer. But the ale is not fermenting, and the young drink does not quicken. Osmo's daughter, brewer of ale, and maker of the table beers, once again reflected on it. Now what should be added to this, as a quickener for the ale, starter for the table beer? Kalevala's daughter, lovely maiden, graceful fingered and light-footed, always quick in every motion, pacing where the floorboards meet, at the center of the chamber, busy with one thing or another, stepping there between 2 kettles, saw a wood chip on the floor, picked the wood chip from the floor, looks it over, turns it over. What could come of this, I wonder, in the hands of some fair maiden, fingertips of some good virgin, if I put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin. So she put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin, with both palms, with both hands, the young maiden, that good virgin, rubbed it onto both her thighs, golden-breasted marten born. Said the virgin to the marten, thus advised her orphan child, my dear marten, little bird, money fur, my beautiful, go now quickly where I tell you and I urge you, to the rocky lair of Bruin, homestead of the forest bear, with the bears are fiercely fighting, where the Bruins live so harshly. Gather up the yeast by fistfuls, cut the leaven in your hands, bring it to the maiden's hand, for the shoulder of Osmo's daughter. Well the marten knew its way, the gold-breasted frisking lightly, covered that long distance quickly, and traversed the space between, across one river and along another slantwise over a third, to the rocky lair of Bruin, to his cave among the rock piles. There indeed the bears were fighting, and the Bruins living harshly, living on an iron cliff, existing on a steely mountain. From the bear's mouth yeast was bubbling, leavened from the dreadful jaws. But the golden marten got it, scooped the yeast up by the handful, scooped the leaven by the fistful, brought it to the maiden's hand, fingertips of that good virgin. Osmo's daughter poured it out in the ale and table beer, but the ale does not ferment, man's good joy juice does not bubble. Osmo's daughter, brewer of ale and maker of the table beers, once again reflected on it. Now what should be added to this, as a quickener for the ale, starter for the table beer? Kalevala's daughter, lovely maiden, graceful-fingered and light-footed, always quick in every motion, pacing where the floorboards meet, at the center of the chamber, busy with one thing or another, stepping there between two kettles, saw a pea-pod on the floor, and she picked it from the floor, looks it over, turns it over. What would come of this, I wonder, in the hands of some fair maiden, fingertips of some good virgin, if I put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin? So she put it in her hand, fingertips of that good virgin, with both palms, with both hands, the young maiden, that good virgin, rubbed it onto both her thighs, and a honey bee was born. Said the virgin to the birdling, thus cajoled her honey bee, "Honey bee, elusive bird, king of all the meadow flowers, fly now quickly where I tell you, and I urge you, to an island in the ocean, to an islet in the sky. There a girl lies fast asleep, with her copper belt unfastened. Round her honey hay is waving, on her loins are honeyed grasses. Bring the honey of your wings, carry nectar in your pockets. From the tender hay tips bring it, from the cups of golden flowers. Bring it to the maiden's hand, to the shoulder of Osmo's daughter." Then the bee, elusive bird, flew and hurried on its mission, flew that lengthy distance quickly, and traversed the way between. Journey shortened as it flew, across one sea along a second, over a third veering slantwise, to the island in the ocean, to the islet in the sea. There it saw the young girl sleeping, tinny-breasted one reclining. There upon a nameless meadow, on a honey meadow's border, golden haystock in her lap, stalk of silver in her belt. Then it dips its wings in honey, soaks its mantle in the nectar, from the brightly colored hay tips, from the cups of golden blossoms, brought it to the maiden's hand, fingertips of that good virgin. Osmo's daughter gladly put it in her ale and table beer. Then the ale began fermenting, the young drink to bubble over, foaming in the wooden tub, in the new-made birchwood cowl, foaming high up to the handles, wanting to run up and over, flooding down along the floor. After a little time passed by, like a tiny rash of rain, men arrived there for the drinking, most especially Lemminkainen, who got drunk the man far-minded, very drunk the rummy rascal, on the ale of Osmo's daughter, on the beer of Kalevala's daughter. Osmo's daughter, brewer of ale, and maker of the table beers, put the matter into words. Ah, the miserable day of mine, when I brewed this awful ale, such unheard of table beer, foaming up and foaming over, billowing down along the floor. From the tree a red bird sang, from beneath the eaves a thrush. No, the brew is not a bad one, it is really quite a good drink. All it needs is to be barreled, aging in a stone-built cellar, in a good stout oak wood barrel, banded tight with copper hooping. Such the origin of ale, and the birth of table beer, beverage of the Kalevalanders. Then it got so good a name, and its famous reputation, for it was indeed good ale, excellent beverage for the prudent, warmed the woman up to laughter, got the menfolk in good humor, and the sillies into clowning, and made the pious merry. Then the mistress of Pohjola, having heard how ale was born, got a new wooden tub, which she poured half full of water, nicely measured in the barley, with a lot of hop pods added. She began to boil the ale to prepare the potent tonic, and the new-made wooden tub, and the new-made birchwood cowl. For long months the stones were heating, and all summer water boiling. Stands of backwood logs were burned, wells of water carried off, so that tree sparse were the backwoods, and low in water were the wells. By the time the ale was brewed, and the table beer was ready, for that mighty Northland party, for that hearty crowd of drinkers, on the island smoke was rising, fire at the headland point, and indeed thick smoke was climbing, filling up the air with smog from the blazing fireplaces. Many fiercely burning fires covered half the Northland acres, and all wide Karelia darkened. All the people came to stare, and one voice cry out, "Where does all the smoke come from, and the smog up in the air? It's too small to be a war smoke, yet too big for Herder's campfire." Lemminkainen's gentle mother, very early in the morning, went for water from the spring, when she sees the thick smoke floating over the northern land. She says, "Those must be the smokes of war, beacon fires sending signals. Ati Islander himself, he the handsome man far-minded, watches turning here and there, thinks it over, and he wonders, I must go and see it nearer, watch it from a closer vantage, where the smoke is coming from, and the smog that fills the air. Could they be the smokes of war? Beacon fires sending signals?" So he went to see up closer what the source of fire might be. They were not the smokes of war, beacon fires sending signals. They were only brewing fires for the ale and table beer at the mouth of Sedgeland Bay, in the shelter of the headland. There he glowers, one eye crossed, the other squinting, with his mouth a little crooked, watching there. At length he spoke, calling from across the bay, "My good mother-in-law to be, you kind mistress of the north, brew a special batch of ale, boil a worthy table beer, for regaling all the crowd, specially for Lemminkainen, at his very own wedding, to your lovely younger daughter." Now at last the ale was ready, man's good joy juice well prepared. Now the red ale has been brewed, lovely table beer fermenting, to be laid away to sleep in a deep and stone-built cellar, therein laid an oak-wood barrel, there behind a bung of copper. Then the mistress of Pohjola started all the stew pots cooking, kettles bubbling, skillets singing, and she baked the good fat loaves, shaping up huge barley cakes for the friendly country people, and to feed the big crowd coming to the feast at Pohjola, drinking bout in foggy Sedgeland. Now the loaves of bread she baked, and the barley cakes were ready. Quickly a little time passed by, like a tiny rash of rain. Ale was bubbling in the barrel, in the cellar beer was restless. If my drinkers would but come, if those guzzlers would but get me, a worthy warbler, skilful singer, so they sought a singer for it. Worthy warbler, skilful singer, one entranced with music's beauty, tried a salmon as a singer, then a pike to be their cuckoo. But the salmon is no singer, and the pike is not a cuckoo. From the salmon's jaws are crooked, and the pike's teeth far apart. Once again they sought a singer, worthy singer, clear-voiced warbler. One entranced with music's beauty, tried a young boy as a singer. Boy to be their singing cuckoo, but a young boy is no singer, nor a drooly-mouthed a cuckoo. Young boy's tongue is stiff and clumsy, and the palate underdeveloped. Impatient now the red beer threatens, and the young drink starts to conjure, pent up in an oakwood barrel, and behind a bung of copper. If you do not get a singer, worthy singer, clear-voiced warbler, one entranced with music's beauty, I will kick the hoops apart and run right through the bottom, said the mistress of Pohjola, sending out her invitations, messengers to make the rounds. Little maid, most faithful servant, call the common folk together, crowd of menfolk to the drinking, call the wretched, call the poor, call the blind and even cripples, even sleigh-bound paralytics, row the blind here in the dories, have the lame ones come on horseback, and the cripples in the sleighs. Summon all the Pohjolanders, summon all the Kalevalanders, and invite old Vanamoinen as official singer for us. But don't ask the man far-minded, not that Ahti islander, but the little servant asked her, but why leave out Lemminkainen? Ahti islander alone? Says the mistress of Pohjola, here is why you do not ask him, that one wayward Lemminkainen, just because he's always brawling, always looking for a fight, acted shamelessly at weddings and at parties causing scandal, as he laughed with virgin maidens, ruffling up their Sunday garments. But the little servant asked her, how am I to recognize him, as to leave him uninvited? I don't know the house of Ahti, homestead of the man far-minded. Said the mistress of Pohjola, you will know him well enough, that one Ahti islander. He is living on an island, surrounded by the sea, the rascal, by the widest of the bays, in the shelter of Cape Far. Then the maiden made the calls in 6 directions, and in 8 the invitations, summoned all the Pohjolanders, summoned all the Kalevalanders, even the lean and landless peasants, workmen in their narrow tunics. Ahti lad, the one and only, he alone was uninvited. Runot 21, The Wedding Feast. There the mistress of Pohjola, the old wife of Sedgeland, waited. She was busy out of doors, tending to her household chores. There she heard a great commotion. On the marshes whips were cracking. Sleighs came rumbling on the shore. She looked northwest and looked southward, wondering what it may portend. What are these folks spying for? On my shores, O wretched me. Could it be a big war party? She went out to see more closely, to examine things more nearly. It was not a big war party, just the bridegroom's own big party. Goodly crowd of country people, with her son-in-law among them. The mistress of Pajola herself, Foggy Sedgeland's old wife, said, when she saw her son-in-law, "Oh, I thought the wind was roaring, or a woodpile rumbling down. Breakers thrashing on the shore, pebbles rattling on the shingles. I went on to look more closely, to examine things more neatly, but no wind at all was roaring, and no woodpile rumbling down. Breakers thrashing on the shore, pebbles rattling on the shingle. It's the bridegroom's party coming twice 100 strong. How do I know my son-in-law in the midst of all these people? As I know the chokecherry tree from among all other trees, or the oak tree from the brushwood, or the moon from the stars of heaven. He rides on a black, black stallion, as if on a hungry wolf, on a raven chasing prey, or the lion bird the griffin. On the shaft-bows bells are singing, 6 gold orioles are singing, 7 other bells are jingling, 7 blue ones on the traces. There's a clatter in the lane, clank of shafts along the well path. Now the bridegroom is arriving. With his party at the farmyard. In the midst of all his people, goodly crowd of country people, soon-in-law is not the first one, nor is he the very last one. Up, boys, and outdoors, you lads, to the farmyard, all you tall ones, to undo the horses' breastbands, loose the traces, lower the shafts, bring the bridegroom to the house. There the bridegroom's horse is running, and his basket sleigh is coasting into the yard of the mother-in-law, and she shouts, "Ho, you slavey, handsome hired man of the village, go attend the bridegroom's stallion, with the white blaze on its forehead, and undo its coppered harness, and remove its tinny breastband, leather traces, sapling shaft boughs. Take the son-in-law's good stallion, lead it with the greatest care, by silken rein and silver bridle, to the softest place for rolling." To a soft and level meadow, where new fallen snow lies softly, on the milk-white pasture land. Water my son-in-law's young horse, water it at the nearby spring, still unfrozen, bubbling over, under root of golden fir, under bushy branching pine tree. Feed my son-in-law's young horse from a golden splint-work basket, from a copper bushel feed him, loaves of cleanly sifted barley, mash of boiled-up summer wheat, and with well-ground summer rye. Take the bridegroom's stallion, then, to the most appropriate manger, to the highest, driest place, to the rearmost farmyard stable. Tie it by a golden loop to a ring of iron fastened, to a stanchion curly grained. Give it half a peck of oats, and a second one of hay-tips, then a third of fine bran middlings. Curry well the bridegroom's stallion with a comb of walrus bone, so that not a hair is broken, not a long hair out of place. Cover it with a silver blanket, golden hood, and cloth of copper. Now, you village boys, good fellows, take the son-in-law inside, with no hat to hide his hair, and no gloves upon his hands. Wait now, let me look and see. Can he get into the house? Or must we take the very doors off, pull the jambs down, lift the lintel, sink the threshold, break the door wall, and remove the very ground sill? No, the bridegroom cannot enter, or good shift beneath the ceiling, till we take the very doors off, pull the jambs down, lift the lintel, so as not to knock his hat off, sink the threshold, break the door wall, and remove the very ground sill, for the son-in-law's too tall. He is taller by a head, higher by an ear at least. Let the lintels now be lifted, that he need not doff his hat. Let the threshold so be sunken, that his shoe heel does not touch it. Let the door frames be removed, that the doorway may be wider, as the son-in-law comes in, as the good man steps inside. Thanks to gracious Jumala, son-in-law is coming in. Wait, I want to look around, glance about the house inside. Are the tables cleanly washed, wall-side benches swabbed with water, puncheons scrubbed, floorboards swept? I am looking at the house, and I do not recognize it. Of what wood the hut is made, how the shelter ever got here, of what the walls have been erected, of how the floors were laid. Side wall made of hedgehog bones, rear wall out of reindeer bones, bones of wolverine the door wall, only lamb bones for the door frames, rafters made of apple wood, uprights out of twisty limber. Larder shelves of lily pads, scales of bream upon the ceiling, and the long bench made of iron, wall-side benches German puncheon, table traced with golden figures, and the floor is smooth with silk. Here the stove is cast of copper, and the hearth of goodly slabstone, fireplace made of smooth sea stones, ingle nook of Kalava's wood. Bridegroom comes into the house, steps in underneath the roof, and he said as he enters, Welcome here, O Jumala, underneath this famous roof tree, underneath this splendid ceiling. Said the mistress of Pajola, Health to you too on your coming into this tiny hut of ours, into such a lowly shelter, firwood room our piney nest. Come, my little serving maid, hired out servant of the village, bring a birch bark torchlight here, and light up a tarry splint, so that I may see him better, see his eyes what color they are. Are they blue, or are they red, or as white as a linen cloth? The little drudge, the serving maid, little hireling of the village, lighted up a stretch of birch bark, brought a light on a tarry splint. Birch bark light is harsh and glaring, black the smoke of tarry splint, which would make his face all smudgy and his handsome figure blacken. Bring the fire on the birch bark to light up a waxen candle. The little drudge, the serving maid, little hiring of the village, brought the fire on the birch bark and lighted up the waxen candle. Then the white smoke of the wax and the bright flame of the birch bark lit the son-in-law's bright eyes, lit the son-in-law's fine features. Now I see the bridegroom's eyes, they are neither blue nor red, and not even linen white, but as white as is the sea foam, and as brown as is the seaweed, and as lovely as the sea sedge, Now, you village boys, good fellows, take this son-in-law of mine to the biggest seat, the highest, back turned towards the blue rear wall, at the head of the red table, facing the invited people. Clatter on the country people. Then the mistress of Pajola, with much food and drink, regaled them, fed their mouths with melted butter, and with cream cakes by the fistful, treating all those guests invited, most of all her son-in-law. There was salmon on the platters, and beside it pork a-plenty. Cups were brimming, bowls all heaping, for the pleasure of the feasters, most of all the son-in-law. Said the mistress of Pajola, now, my little serving maid, bring the beer out in a pitcher, serve it in the two-eared tankards, to those guests that I've invited, especially to my son-in-law. So the little serving maid, drudging laborer for money, let the pitcher do its duty as the 5-hooped mugs go round, giving a beer rinse to the beards, whitening whiskers with its foam, whiskers of the guest invited, most of all the son-in-laws. With what more can this ale do now? Said the 5-hooped tankard then, when it's beside the singer, by the most respected minstrel. There indeed was Vanamoinen, he the very soul of music, master singer, truest artist. First he took his ale, then said, "O you ale, you pleasant brew, let no man drink up for nothing. Set them all to singing now, golden mouse to cuckooing. Household masters may be wondering, and their mistresses all puzzling. Have our songs already withered? Have the tongues of joy departed? Or perhaps I made bad ale, had a run of weaker brew. Sing our singers are not singing, and good poets saying nothing. All our dear guests not cuckooing, no joyance from our cuckoos crawling. Who will do the singing here? Who indeed is singing now at this Pajola's great banquet, joyful drinking bout at Sedgeland? Here the benches will not sing, if the singers on them do not, nor the floors make recital, if the walkers on them will not, nor the windows merry make, if their masters will not do so, nor will the table edges, if the sitters on them will not, nor can smoke holes celebrate, if those below them are not singing. On the floor a child was sitting, milk-beard infant on the stove bench. Said the child from the floor, spoke the boy child from the bench end. I am not very big in years, not so stout in body either, but however that may be, if the fat ones will not sing, nor the stout men raise their voices, ruddy-faced ones not regale us, I then, the lean lad, will tune up, dry stick of a boy will carol, from this meagre flesh shall sing, from these juiceless loins make music, for the pleasure of our evening, and honor of this famous day. Then an old man on the stove-top put the matter into words. What is there to children singing but the cooling of the bratlings? Fancy fibs are children's ballads, and the songs of girls are empty. Leave the singing to the wise man who is sitting on the bench here. Then old Vanamoinen spoke. Is there one among the youngsters, one among this whole great clan, who would put hand into hand, hooking one into another, and would break out in a ballad, burst out with a joyful song, to celebrate this closing day in honor of this famous evening? Said the old man from the stove-top, never before have you heard, never have you heard or seen, never before in all of time, better singer, truer artist, than when I was sweetly cooing, lilting, larking in my boyhood, over the waters of the bay,
echoing clear across the heathlands, calling cuckoo in the fir groves, chanting magic in the wild woods. Strong and graceful was my voice, and my tone most beautiful. Then it flowed on like a river, sparkling like a water brook. Like a ski on snow it glided, like a sailboat on the waves. Now I hardly dare to tell, hardly even understand. What destroyed that mighty voice and untuned those precious notes? Flows no longer like a river, nor wave like does it rise and fall, but it is like a bushwood harrow, dragging over stumpy ground, or a pine dry over snow crust, grating like a sleigh on shore sand, like a skiff across dry stones. Then old Vanamoinen said, "Since there's no one here to join me, sing along with me. Then alone I'll start my ballads and begin my song recital. Since I was born to be a singer, destined to make magic music, I asked no neighbor for directions and no text from any stranger. Thereupon old Vanamoinen, he the very soul of music, set himself to joyous making, ready for his lyricking, lavished all the joy of legends, all the magic of his garnering. Then old Vanamoinen sang, and oh, how could he sing? Words not lacking for his magic, verses never for his chanting. Sooner rocks and cliffs were missing, or lilies in a lily pond. There old Vanamoinen chanted, making merry all the evening, women all with laughing mouths, all the men in joyful humor, listened breathless in their wonder as Vanamoinen's past productions, for it was a marvel to them, even to all airy beings. Said old Vanamoinen then, as he closed his great recital, "When in fact am I at all, as a singer, as an artist, having in myself no power, not truly fit for anything, were the great Creator singing, chanting with his flowing voice, it would be the song of songs, chant of chants, and art of arts. He would sing the seas to honey, and the sea sands into peas, into malt the ooze of ocean, and its gravel into salt, all wide woodlands into cornfields, and the clearings into wheat fields, and the hills to sugar cakes, and the boulders into hens' eggs. He would sing with perfect art, sing his magic and create, chant the cowsheds of his homestead, full of heifers, lanes, and cattle, and the clearings full of milkers, a full 100 of horn bearers, and 1,000 udder carriers. He would sing with perfect art, sing his magic and create, coats of lynx fur for the masters, coats of broadcloth for the matrons, laceless slippers for the daughters, and red tunics for the sons. Jumala, thou true Creator, grant the same some other time, so that all of us may live to enjoy the same once more. Banquet here at Pajola, joyful drinking bouts at Sedgeham, where the ale may flow like rivers, and the mead like water brooks. In these halls of Pajola, in these log-built halls of Sedgeland, that our days be filled with singing, and our nights with merry-making, in the lifetime of the master, in the lifetime of the mistress. May High Jumala reward you, the Creator reimburse you. Master at the long deal table, and the mistress in her storerooms, sons upon the scening grounds, daughters busy at their weaving, so that no one will regret, nor complain some other year, of this mighty banquet here,
of the great crowd in this drinking. Runot 22. The Teasing of the Bride. When the guests had drunk their fill, feasted at the wedding there, and the house of Pajola, banqueted in gloomy Sedgeland, said the mistress of Pajola to Ilmarinen her son-in-law, "What are you sitting waiting for, man of such a mighty clan, hero of the countryside, staying for the father's favor, or the kindness of the mother, for the cleanness of the cabin, good looks of the wedding party? It's not for the father's favor, nor the kindness of the mother, not the cleanness of the cabin, good looks of the wedding party, but for the favor of your sweetheart, for the kindness of your bride, brightness of the eyes you long for, beauty of the long-haired maiden. Bridegroom, my most precious brother, you have waited long, wait longer. Your desired one is not ready. Lifelong partner is not prepared. Only half her hair is braided, and the other half is braidless. Bridegroom, my most precious brother, you have waited long, wait longer. Your desired one is not ready. Lifelong partner not prepared. Only one sleeve has been sewn, and the other waits for sewing. Bridegroom, my most precious brother, you have waited long, wait longer. Your desired one is not ready. Lifelong partner not prepared. Only one foot has been shod. But the other foot is shoeless. Bridegroom, my most precious brother, you have waited long, wait longer. Your desired one is not ready. Lifelong partner not prepared. One hand's fully gloved already, but the other still is gloveless. Bridegroom, my most precious brother, long you've waited without tiring. Your desired one now is ready, and your duckling quite prepared. Go along now, dowered maiden, chick whose bride price has been settled. Now your union is at hand, and your time of parting near. With your bridegroom by your side, with your taker at the door, stallion champing at the bit, while the sleigh is waiting for you. You were always quick for money, quick to put your hand out for it, ever eager for the bride gifts, and for putting on the ring. Be as quick now for the sleighing, ready to go visiting, eager for your riding off. Maybe not till now, young lady, have you weighed the good and bad sides, nor even never even understood if you made a sorry bargain, one to weep for all your lifetime and regret in years to come that you left your father's house and departed from your birthplace, from your mother, from your bearer. How was it living here at home on the wide paternal acres, like a flower in the laneway, like a strawberry in a clearing? When you get up from the straw, by the time you've stopped your yawning, there is morning milk and butter, new-made butter with your wheat cakes. When there was no butter ready, you just sliced up breakfast bacon. Here you had no care at all, nothing much to worry over. Let the tall old pine trees worry, and the fence rails do the pondering. Let the swamp pines do the grieving, and the heath birch on the heather. Like a leaf yourself you fluttered, meandered like a butterfly, as a raspberry in a meadow, berry in your mother's garden. You are leaving this home now, going to another house, subject to a different mother, and the household of a stranger. That way there, this way here, different in each different household. Herders' horns sound different there. Different is the sound of doors, creak of gates and squeak of hinges. You cannot go in or out,
freely through a gate or door, as the daughters of the house do, cannot blow the fire up rightly, heat the hearth up properly, to the liking of the master. Do you think, my young lady, did you fancy or imagine, just to go off for a night, only to return next morning? You are not going for a night, not for one night, not for two. You are going for a long time, forever from your father's shelter, for a lifetime from your mother's. And the home yard will be longer by a step, and the threshold one sill higher, when you come again returning, coming back some future time. Then the miserable maiden sighed and sobbed with heart-deep sorrow, water rising to her eyes, and she worded her confusion. Thus I thought it, thus imagined, fancied it throughout my lifetime, and repeated through my growth time. You will not remain a maiden in the shelter of your parents, on the acres of your father, in the chambers of your mother. Then indeed you'll be a woman when you go out to a husband, one foot still upon the threshold, one foot on your husband's sleigh. You'll be taller by a head, higher by an ear at least. This I hoped for all my lifetime, fancied all my growing years, wished for as a fruitful harvest, or the coming of the summer. Now those hopes are coming true, and my leaving is at hand, one foot halting on the threshold, one foot on my husband's sleigh. But I do not understand what it was that changed my mind. I did not leave with any gladness, nor depart rejoicing hence from this long-loved home of mine, where I spent my younger years, from these meadows of my growth time, harvest meadows of my father. Still slight and slender I am leaving with a load of sorrow, already homesick on the doorstep, as if wandering out alone, in the lap of autumn night, walking fearful through the darkness, over glassy springtime ice, leaving not a trace behind me, not a footprint on the ice. How do others bear such parting, other newly wedded women? Surely they can't feel such sorrow, carry no such homesick heart, as do I, unhappy creature. I am burdened with black sorrow, heart as black as soot is black, and as dread as dark as charcoal. Like the rising sun of springtime, sunny as a bright spring morning, is the temper of the happy, spirit of the blessed people. How then is it with my mind, in the darkness of my spirit? Like a boulder on a pond shore, like the dark edge of a cloud, stilly black as autumn night, and as dark as day in winter. It is even darker, blacker than an autumn night. Now indeed there spoke a woman, always busy in the household. Now, young lady, just remember when I told you 100 times, never give your heart to a suitor, never for his eyes or looks, nor the sweetness of his mouth, even for his handsome legs. He smiles at you with melting mouth, ogles you with innocent eyes, though the devil's on his jawbone, doom be dwelling in his mouth. So I counseled my young lady, and I always prompted her. When the powerful suitors come, mighty men known nation-wide, you yourself address them thus, and so speak out for yourself. Speak out boldly, tell them this: by no means will I be taken as a daughter-in-law, led out to become a slavey. Any maiden with my looks could not so live as a slave, and what's more would not know how, always humble in her manner, always under someone's thumb. If I get a scolding word, I would answer back with two. If they tried to pull my hair, ever made that bad mistake, with a twist I'd break their wrist, send them sprawling with a shove. Did you mind me? Listen to me? Never heeded me at all? Stubbornly went to the burning of a backwoods clearing, to the cooking out of tar, set out on sly Reynard's sleigh, out the runners of old Bruin, for the fox to whisk away, for the bear to carry off, as the master's slave forever, bond slave to a mother-in-law? Left your home and went to school, for your father's field to torment, difficult the schooling there, wearisome the penalties. There arrived as a boaten slave, prisoners' irons will be waiting, not for anyone else but you, poor benighted wilful woman. Soon you will experience, you unhappy girl will suffer, the jawboning of the old man, stony tongue of mother-in-law, chilly words of brother-in-law, scornful shrugs of sister-in-law. Listen, girl, to what I'm saying, telling you. In your home you were a flower, in your father's yard a joy. Your fond father called you moonlight, and your mother named you sunshine, and your brother sparkling water, and your sister blue broadcloth. In the house where you are going, you will have a different mother, nor will not be like your own, nothing like the one who bore you. Seldom will she scold you sweetly, seldom teach you carefully. Father-in-law you will call Pine-brush, only fit to be a doormat. Mother-in-law a Lapland sledge. Brother-in-law you will call Dorsil, and sweet sister-in-law a harlot. If you do your chores nimbly, quick as puff of mist or smoke, blowing leaf or shooting spark, you might be considered worthy, accepted as an able worker. But you are no flying bird, fluttering leaf or shooting spark, nor miss to slip unseen outdoors. Oh, my miss, my little sister, you have bartered what a bargain, best of fathers for a bad one, and a most devoted mother for an angry mother-in-law. Left at home the best of brothers for a crook-neck brother-in-law. Left at home a handsome sister for a frog-eyed sister-in-law. Left your bed of linen sheets for one beside a sooty campfire. Your clear brooks for dirty ditches, sandy shores for muddy bottoms, fruitful fields for barren heathlands, buried hills for burnt-out stumpland. So, young maiden, budding chick, did you really imagine, that your troubles would be over, and your labors also lightened, by this evening's ceremony, that to bed you would be taken, and presented with sweet dreamings? But you won't be put to bed, nor presented with sweet dreamings. Now your sleepless nights begin, and your troubles multiply, cares enough to think about, till they turn your mind awry. When you played without a kerchief, then you played without a care. When you wore no linen headscarf, you were without serious worry. Now the kerchief brings but care, and the headdress only sorrow. Worries with the linen scarf, with the flaxen woes unending. How is it with girl at home? In her father's house she rules, like a king within his castle, lacking nothing but a sword. With a daughter-in-law it's different, living in her husband's household, as if she was confined, like a prisoner in Russia, lacking nothing but a jailer. She does her work in working hours, shoulders leaning, body sweating, and her forehead glistening wet. But when another hour comes, she's condemned to fiery duties, driven to the demon's forge, to the devil's very hand. She will need, pitiable maiden, the persistence of a salmon, tongue of ruff, the wit of perchling, mouth of dace and belly of bleak, and the wisdom of the Scotter. No one knows or understands, not 9 daughters of one mother, reared and cherished by their parents, whence the spoiler is begotten, whence the gnawing demon grows, flesh devourer and bone biter, evil one who tears your hair out till it's flying in the wind, cold spring chill ahava, sorrow, sorrow, maiden young, when your sorrows swell, weep a handful, double handful, spray your father's yard with teardrops, weep a puddle on the floor, flood the whole house with your tears, wash the floorboards with their waves. If you do not weep for sorrow, you will weep another time, when returning home again you should find your poor old father, smothered in the smoky sauna, piteous with a dried up slapper in the hollow of his arm. Sorrow, sorrow, maiden young, when your sorrow well. If you do not weep for sorrow, you will weep another time, returning to your mother's home when you find your poor old mother, suffocated in the cow barn, sheaf of hay still in her lap. Sorrow, sorrow, maiden young, when you sorrow well. If you do not weep for sorrow, you will weep another time, on returning to this home, when you find your rosy brother, lying on the narrow laneway, fallen on the old home ground. Sorrow, sorrow, maiden young, when you sorrow well. If you do not weep for sorrow, you will weep another time, on returning to this house, where you find your lovely sister, sunken on the laundry pathway, with a well-worn laundry beater in the hollow of her arm. Then the poor girl, panting, sighing, broke out into bitter tears, wept by handfuls, double handfuls, on her father's well-swept farmyard, tear ponds on her father's floor. Then she said, "Oh, my sisters, little finches, lifelong comrades, all you playmates of my childhood, listen now to what I tell you. This I do not understand. What has struck me with such sorrow, this anxiety come upon me, this homesickness and this yearning? All my lifetime I imagined, thought it to be other than this, other than what you tell me now. Fancied I could play the cuckoo, calling cuckoo on the hillocks, when they longed for days would brighten, with my fancies all made real. Now I will not play the cuckoo, calling cuckoo on the hillocks. I am like an old squaw tossing on uneasy billows, like a teal upon a bay, swimming in the frigid water, padding in the icy water. Woe my father, woe my mother, woe my most respected parents. For what purpose did you make me, when you bore this wretched creature? To weep these tears, bear this misery, grieve these grievings, sorrows? You might as well, my poor mother, lovely bearer and milk giver, gentle one who suckled me, might as well have swaddled tree stumps, or have washed out little stones, as to have bathed this little daughter, swaddled thus your cherished darling, to survive for such deep sorrow, to be cast in such dejection. Many say and others think, silly thing, she has no worries, not a sad thought in her head. No, good people, do not say that. My anxieties are many, more than there are rocks and rapids, more than willows on poor soil, more than heather on a heathland. No horses hauls a load so heavy, straining forward iron shod with the quivering of the collar or the shaking of a shaft bow. So heavy a load as I must carry on my slender maiden shoulders, load of care and dark dejection. On the floor a child was singing, young taught by the ingle nook. What is there to young girls' weepings, to be fancied woes and worries? Leave the worries to the horse, troubles to the great black geldings. Let the big head do the worrying, and the iron mouth the moaning. A horse's head is fitter for it, fitter head and stronger bones, with the arch of neck more powerful, and the whole frame more abundant. There is nothing here to weep for, nor wide woe to worry over. They won't take you to the marshes, lead you down along the ditches. You are going from good to better, from a corn patch good enough to a broader, richer cornfield, from a brew house good enough to a place where ale flows freely. If you turn and look beside you, there your sweetheart as your shelter, hardy husband to console you, driving you to a richer homestead. Good man, good horse, sleigh bells ringing, on the shaft bows grouse are preening, on the traces thrushes singing, gaily ringing and rejoicing, and 6 golden cuckoo bells are all bobbing on the hames, 7 blue ones on the sleigh prow, calling, calling, cuckoo, cuckoo. Do not, child of mother born, do not fret about what's coming. You won't be in worse position, rather in a better station. There besides your plowman husband, under the cloak of furrow maker, on the breast of your breadwinner, in the arms of your fish catcher, in the sweat of your elk skier, with the bear killer in the sauna. You have got the best of husbands, and the hardiest of fellows, for his crossbows will not idle, nor his quivers on the wall pegs. Neither will the dogs lay idle, nor the puppies on the litter. 3 times in this spring already, very early in the morning, he awakened by his campfire, got up from his bed of pine boughs. 3 times in this spring already, dew has dropped down on his eyes, and pine needles brushed his hair. The young shoots caressed his body. He's the breeder and the feeder of a growing crop of cattle, and indeed our bridegroom has them. Some are hoofing through the backwoods, others legging over ridges, seeking lush grass in the hollows, horn bearers by the hundreds, udder bearers by the thousands, haystacks heaped in every clearing, and by every brook a corn crib, alder thickets turned to cornfields, barley growing by the ditches, fields of oats along the river, wheat fields by the water courses, all the rock piles made of money, and the pebbles silver pennies. Runot 23. The Teaching of the Bride. We must now advise the maiden and instruct the bride to be. Who is there to teach the girl? Be the virgin's counselor. Osmo's daughter, able woman. Kalava's daughter, lovely virgin. She's the one to teach the bride. Be the tutor for the maiden. Show her how to act with wisdom, living in her husband's home, always pleasant to her husband, humble to her mother-in-law. So the tutor thus began, spoke out in these sentences. Sweetheart, bride, sister, loved one, listen now to what I'm saying, what I'm telling you once more. You are leaving now, my flower, like a strawberry runner creeping. Thread of broadcloth, bit of velvet, leaving now your well-known home. This most beautiful of homesteads, going to another household, to a family of strangers, other households, other ways. Things are different with all strangers. There you have to watch your step and conduct yourself with caution, not as on your father's fields, nor the meadows of your mother, singing in the echoing valley, caroling along the laneways. When you move away from home, take all your other things but three. Leave these three at home beside you. All your daydreams, mother's kindness, and fresh butter from the churn. Remember all your movables, but let your dream box be forgotten. Bequeath it to the girls at home, dreaming by the old home fireplace. Leave your songs upon the bench end, joy songs on the window sills. Girlhood to the sauna slappers, giddiness to burlap bitings. All bad habits on the stove bench, laziness upon the floor. Or then give them to the bridesmaid, stuff them underneath her arm, to be taken to the bushes, thrown away among the heather. New ways must be taken on, and the old ones be forgotten. Father's love must be forgotten, father-in-law's well accepted. Bow down lower, speak more gently. New ways must be taken on, and the old ones be forgotten. Mother's love must be forgotten, mother-in-law's well accepted. Bow down lower, speak more gently. New ways must be taken on, and the old ones be forgotten. Brother's love must be forgotten, brother-in-law's well accepted. Bow down lower, speak more gently. New ways must be taken on, and the old ones be forgotten. Sister's love must be forgotten, sister-in-law's well accepted. Bow down lower, speak more gently. Do not ever in your lifetime, while the golden moon still glimmers, go to a house that lacks in manners, where a husband is unmanly. Every house must show good manners, especially a decent household. A husband tests your character, even the very best of them. When a house is in disorder, then a careful wife is needed. When the husband is unsteady, it demands a steadfast woman. If it turns out that the old man is a bad wolf in the corner, mother-in-law a grumbling bear, basking there beside the fireplace, son a viper on the doorsill, daughter sharp thorns in the dooryard, you must give the same respect. You must bow down lower, lower than before with your mother, lower than in your father's house. You bow down to your father, humbler than before your mother. You must keep yourself alert, clear in mind, severe in thought, with your understanding ready, eyes awake to tend the torches when the evening's tasks are done. In the morning, ears alert, listen to the early cockcrow, when the cock has crowed but once, and the second crow not sounded. Then it's time for the young to rise, and the old to go on sleeping. If the rooster does not crow, if the master's bird is silent, take the moon then for your rooster, take the great bear for your guide. Go outside repeatedly. Watch the moving of the moon. From the great bear take instruction. Study out the stars of heaven. When the bear's in right position, front directly southward pointing, and the tail is straightly northward, then it's time for you to rise from the side of your young sweetheart. Slip out from the rosy sleeper. Hurry away to light the fire, to uncover it from ashes. Blow on it, but do it softly, lest you blow the sparks all over. If no fire is in the ashes, no sparker in the tinder box, pet your dear one, coax your handsome. Give me light, my dear, my darling, just a little spark, my berry. You will get a tiny flint and a tiny bit of tinder. Strike a fire in a flash, light a wood splint in the holder. Hurry out to clean the cow barn and to feed the walking cattle. Mother-in-law's cow is lowing, and the old man's horse is neighing, while the son's cow chain is rattling, and the father's calf is bawling, for you to hurry with the hay, or to favor it with clover, bending over in the cow barn, stooping through the cattle shed. Feed the cattle gently, feed the cattle quietly, and be gentle with the sheep. Give the straw out to the cows, water the heifers on the sickly. Then give fine straw to the foals, to the lambs the finest hay. Do not holler at the pigs, do not kick the little piglets. Take a troughful for the pigs, and another for the piglets. Do not loaf around the cow barn, nor loiter pottering in the sheep pen. When you've cleaned the cattle shed, and have tended to the cattle, then go like the driven snow, quickly back into the house. In the house of child is crying, baby wrapped up in the covers, for the poor child cannot talk, and being speechless cannot tell you whether he is cold or hungry, or if something else is wrong, before his dear one comes to him, and he hears his mother's voice. When you come into the house, come in as a fourfold object, in your hand a water bucket, underneath your arm a twig broom, and underneath your teeth a fire stick. You yourself are then the fourth. Wipe the sills and sweep the floor, then throw water on the floorboards, but do not throw it on the baby. If you see a baby there, even one of sisters-in-law's, set the baby on a bench, wash its face, and smooth its hair. Butter a piece of bread for it, and put it in the baby's hand. If no bread is in the house, put a wood chip in its hand. When you come to wash the tables, by the end of the week at latest, don't forget to wash the edges, and don't skip the table legs. Rinse the benches off with water, and with a bird wing wipe the walls. All the benches with their sides, walls along their stripes and chinklings. Where there's dust upon the table, or upon the window sills, wipe them over with a wring. With a wet rag wipe them down. Then the dust can't fly around, floating way up to the ceiling. Scrape the soot down from the ceiling. Sweep it also from the fireplace. Keep in mind the chimney too, and don't forget the rafters either. Get it looking like a real house, respected as a decent dwelling. Listen, girl, to what I'm saying speaking of. Never romp around undressed, laze about without a smock. Never go without a kerchief, roam about without your shoes. That could make your sweetheart angry, 'cause you're young man to complain. Some things you must guard with care. There are rowans in the dooryard. Rowans in the yard are sacred. Rowan branches too are holy, and the leaves upon the branches, and the berries even holier. By their means a girl may learn, a young woman may be guided, to affect her sweetheart's feelings, even to command his heart. Be alert as mouse ears, feet as quick as rabbit's feet. Nape as quick as supple bending as a growing juniper, or the green tip of a chokeberry. You must keep yourself alert, always wakeful on your guard. Lest you settle on your seat, stretching out upon the stove bench, or flop down on the bedding, lounging lazy on the bedstead. Brother-in-law comes from plowing, father-in-law from mending fences, husband from his work outdoors, handsome back from burning clearings. Take them water with a bucket and a wiper from their hands. Bow down humbly, speaking gently. Come the mother from the storehouse, poor basket in her arms. Run to meet her in the yard, bow and ask to take her basket, to relieve her of her burden, and to take it to the house. When you do not know yourself, or you cannot even guess, what work you should turn to next, or what new task to begin, ask the mother-in-law to tell you. Oh, my kind, kind mother-in-law, how have you arranged the work? How are all the chores assigned? Quite agreeably she will answer. The old mother-in-law will tell you. This is how it's done with us, how the work is all arranged. Grain is pounded, flour ground, rocking with the kern staff. Water carried, dough is kneaded, firewood carried to the house, that the stove may be well heated when the dough is shaped and risen. Then it's baked in big fat buns. Next the dishes must be washed. Firkins must be rinsed out cleanly. When you heard the woman out and your chores have been recounted, hurry to the grinding shed with the dried grain from the hearthstone. Then when you have gotten there, go into the grinding shed. Do not cuckoo on the way. Do not warble out full-throated. Let the kernstone do the singing, and the kernstaff do the warbling. Do not puff or pant too loudly as you turn and turn the handmill, lest your father-in-law imagine, or your mother-in-law suppose, that your puffing is from anger, resentment sizzling in your heart. Sift the flour briskly, take it, and a basket to the house. Knead the bread more carefully. Mix the dough most evenly, that no clots of flour are left, leaving only clear, smooth mixture. If you see a cowl turned over, take the cowl up on your shoulder. Under your arm a water bucket. Walk down with them to the water. Carry the cowl carefully. By the end of the cowl staff, and the house is like a wind, like a spring wind to Hava, without lingering at the well, gazing down upon the water, lest your father-in-law imagine, or your mother-in-law suppose, that you're gazing at your image in self-admiration vainly, rosy features on the water, beauty marrowed in the well. From the wood-pile, from the long stack, fetch the faggots for the fire. Do not scorn the poorest wood. Take even aspen billets. Toss the billets quietly, without any clunking clatter, lest your father-in-law imagine, or your mother-in-law suppose, that you're flinging them in anger, slamming them about in temper. When you start out to the storehouse, go out there to fetch the flour. Do not linger in the storehouse. Stay there any length of time, lest your father-in-law imagine, or your mother-in-law suppose, that you're dealing out the flour, giving it to village women. When you come to washing dishes and to scouring out the firkins, wash the jugs and wash the handles, and the pitchers with their grooves. Rinse the mugs, remember the rims, and the spoons, remember the handles. Count the spoons and count the dishes, and keep track of all utensils, lest the dogs should run off with them, or the cats contrive to keep them, or the birds fly off with them. Children scatter them abroad. In the village there are children, little heads enough and more to carry off the pots and pans, and to carry spoons abroad. When it's time for evening sauna, fetch the water and the slappers. Steep the slappers soft and ready in smoke-free sauna. Do not linger in the sauna. Stay there any length of time, lest your father-in-law imagine, or your mother-in-law suppose, that you're lazing on the platform, basking on the sauna benches. When you go back to the house, there invite your father-in-law. Oh, my kind, kind father-in-law, now the sauna is quite ready. Water hold and slappers ready. all the steps and platforms swept. Go and wash yourself at leisure. Splash the water without stinting. On the floor below the platform, I will be the vapor maker. When it's time to do the spinning, time to work at weaving cloth, don't rely on neighbor fingers, teaching from across the brook, directions from another household, or a weaver's reed from strangers. You yourself must spin the threads, warp and weft with your fingers. Make the weft threads somewhat looser, and the warp threads twisted tighter. Then you wind the yarn up firmly. Roll it lightly on the reel, then adjust it for the warp beam, and align it for the loom. Strike the batten, lift the heddles, weave the cloth for homespun jackets, woolen skirts from single fleeces, from the coats of winter sheep, from the fluff of spring-born lamb, from the down of summer ewe. Listen then to what I'm saying, once again to what I tell you. Brew the barley beer in batches, tasty malt drink made from barley, using but only barley corn, burning only half a tree trunk. When you're sprouting barley corn, sweetening the malted grain, do not lift it with a crook, do not stir it with a stick. Always lift it with your hands, turn it over with your palms. Check the sauna very often. Do not let the sprouts be spoiled. Do not let the cat sit on them, or the tomcat sleep upon them. Do not worry about the wolves, nor the wild beasts of the forest. When you go to check the sauna, coming and going there at midnight. When your neighbors come to visit, never be unfriendly to them. Every well-kept household always keeps provisions for a visitor. Broken meats with odds and ends, such as sweet buns and the like. Gently ask them to be seated, and converse with them politely. Feed the strangers with kind words, till the dinner is prepared. Then again, when they are leaving and are saying their goodbyes, do not walk out with the visitors. Do not go beyond the door, lest it make your husband angry, make your handsome one be sulky. If the urge should come upon you to go calling on your neighbors, only then go visiting after you have got permission. When you go there, guard your speaking. Do not find fault with your household, nor abuse your mother-in-law. Other daughters-in-law may ask, or some other village women, does your mother-in-law give butter as your mother did at home? Do not ever say, no, she does not give me butter, but instead you tell them grandly, yes, she always gives me butter, serves it out in ladlefuls. Say it even though it happened only once in early summer, and the butter old and rancid from another winter's churning. Listen yet to what I'm saying, and again relating to you. When you go away from here, and you join another household, don't forget your mother ever, or belittle her to others. Say it was who nourished you, suckled you at her own sweet breast. From her own dear self she fed you, from the whiteness of her body. Many a sleepless night she passed, many a meal she quite forgot, while she rocked you in your cradle, tending you her little one. Whoever does forget her mother, or belittles her own mother, cannot go to Manala, or to Tuoni with clear conscience. Mana's penalty is heavy, harsh the reckoning of Tuoni, for one who does forget her mother, or belittles her own mother. Tuoni's daughters will berate you. Mana's maidens bite and bicker. How could you forget your mother, or belittle your own mother? So she endured such great distress, fearful anguish when she bore you, lying on the sauna floor, on the straw bed in the sauna, as she was giving birth to you, bearing you, ungrateful wretch. A woman who sat upon the floor, old wife wrapped up in her mantle, wanderer at village thresholds, one who knew the beggar's road, who related her stark story. To this deer the cock is crowing, chanticleer to his daring. In the snow month crows were cawing, singing, swinging in the springtime. I am the one who should be singing, cocks and crows remaining silent. They're at home with all their dear ones, their beloved always by them. But I have no home, no dear one. All my days are loveless, lonely. Listen, sister, as I tell you, when you go to your husband's home, do not heed your husband's wishes, as I, the wretched, heeded them. Man's desire and tongue of lark, heart's desire of my great suitor. As a girl I was a flower, twig of heather, supple sapling, bursting bud, and was called berry of the Arctic bramble. Golden one was whispered to me. In my father's meadow teal, wild goose in my mother's chambers, called a seabird at my brother's, then a bunting at my sister's. Free and worryless I roamed, as a flower in the lanes, as a raspberry in the meadows, gamboled on the sandy shores, over flowery pathways dancing, tripped it over hill and hollow, sang from every dune and dale, hymned and hummed through every glade, playing games in leafy groves, in the clearings always joyous. Hunger draws the fox to snares, tongue of weasel to a trap, so the instinct of a maiden draws a maiden to a man. Custom to another household, thus indeed a girl is molded, thus a daughter lullabied, to become a daughter-in-law, and a slave to mother-in-law. I, a berry, was transplanted, chokecherry moved to other shores, whortleberry to be snipped at, or a strawberry to be scolded. Every tree was snapping at me, every elder cutting at me, every birch berating me, every aspen all abusive. So they wed me to a husband, dragged me to a mother-in-law. They had told me as they wooed me that there were 6 fir-wood houses, twice as many separate chambers, many barns around the clearings, flower beds along the laneways, barley growing by the brooksides, flourishing oat fields on the heath, bins of grain already threshed, other binfuls still be threshed, 100 coins already gotten, and another 100 coming. There I, like a fool, went traipsing, like an idiot gave my hand. There the promised house was built, of 6 props and 7 poles. Clearings empty of all mercy, woodlots empty of affection. Lanes are full of cares for me, woodlands full of woes and worries. Bins containing winnowed angers, others filled with unthreshed hatreds. At 100 scoldings gotten, 100 more to be expected. But I paid no heed to that, tried to do my duties humbly. Thus I hoped to earn respect and to gain some real affection. Lanes are full of cares for me, woodlands full of woes and worries. Bins containing winnowed angered, others filled... Oh, did I already read this? I did. At the door I bumped my forehead, right against the doorpost struck it. In the doorway strange eyes stare, fierce eyes from the chimney corner, from the milled floor squint eyes glare. From the back wall eyes most hateful, From his mouth the fire is spurting. Burning brands beneath his tongue, all from mouth of nasty master, from beneath that cruel tongue. But I did not yield to this, tried somehow to live and bear it, always meekly at the mercy, and submissive to their orders. Ran around on rabbit feet, went about on weasel paws, got to bed so wearily late, and got up so tiredly early. But I earned me no respect, nor brought me any tenderness, even had I moved great mountains, or had split the crags asunder. Quite in vain I ground coarse grain, carefully sifted out the grit, for my mother-in-law to dine on, the old guzzle throat to gobble, seated at her long deal table, gobbling from a gold-rimmed platter. I, the wretched daughter-in-law, ate the scrapings from the kernstone, with the stove bench for my table, for my spoon a wooden ladle. Many times as daughter-in-law, when I still lived with my husband, I collected marshland grasses. These I baked for my bread, for my after-dinner toddy. I had nothing but plain water, dipped up in a birchen scooper. I ate fish, Baltic sprats, only when I worked at seining, swinging widely with the swain sweeps, rocking, tilting with the boat. But I never got much fish, never from my mother-in-law, not so much as would suffice for a day or for a mouthful. I spent summers gathering fodder, winters heaving on a dung fork, like a serf of olden days, like a slave or hired farmhand, always at my mother-in-law's. Got the heaviest of the tools, heftiest flail at threshing time, biggest flax brake from the sauna, heaviest beater at the washing, clumsiest dung fork in the barnyard. No one thought that I could tire, or that I could sink exhausted, even though the men tired out, and young horses were exhausted. Thus I worked in working hours, thus I labored through each workday. Miserable maid and servant now, labored straining every muscle. Let another mood come on, they condemned me to the fire, consigned me to the very devil. For no reason I was scolded and deliberately abused, as reward for my endeavors, payment for my good behavior. Spiteful words, abusive sayings, rained on me like burning sparks, or like iron hailstones pelting. Even this I did not question, would have lived on as before, with an angry mother-in-law, helper to that fire-tongued crone. But there came a grievous thing, a thing that multiplied my sorrows. Sweetheart turned into a wolf, handsome husband to a bear, turned his side to me when eating, turned his back to me when sleeping, turned his back to me when working. Over this I wept alone, puzzling on it in my storehouse. I remembered other days, how I lived before at home, on the wide fields of my father, in my gentle mother's home. I began to dwell upon it, talking to myself aloud. Well enough my mother knew how to get her little apple, had the skill to grow the seedling, but not where it should be planted. And she set the lovely seedling in a very noisome setting, put it in an unfit place in the tough roots of a birch tree, there to weep its life away, lost in month-long lamentations. Wasn't I fit for higher station, longer yards and wider floors, finer figure for embracing, fuller blooded man for husband? Got tied up to this fat belly, stuck with this old shuffle shoe, got his torso from a crow, snatched his nose from a croaking corby, and his mouth from a greedy wolf, his whole frame from an old bruin. Just by going up the hill, such a one I could have gotten, from a pitchy roadside stump, from a hollow log of alder, lump of turf to make his snout, and his beard of mouldy mosses, mouth of stone and head of clay, and his eyes of glowing coals, stuck on birch galls for his ears, for his legs a sallow fork. This the sorry spell I sang, sobbing away in frustration. Happened that my handsome heard it, standing there beside the wall. Suddenly then he comes for me, stamping on the storehouse steps. I knew him by the way he walked, knew him each step and stride. Though not a breath of wind was blowing, his hair was upright, wildly waving. Gums were grinning, eyes popped staring, in his hand a rowan switch, knotty cudgel under arm, and with these he comes to beat me, clubs me crack across the pate. Let the evening come again, then at bedtime takes a strap, leathery lash down from a nail, lays it on the bed beside him, and of course it's there for me, not for anyone else, be sure. When I came to bed that evening, sweetheart came and lay beside me, gave my ribs an elbow jab, beat me with a furious hand, many a blow with willow switches, whipstock made of walrus bone. Then his chilly flank I felt, from the cold, cold bed I rose. Sweetheart followed on my heels, driving me with threats outdoors. In my hair his fist he twisted, tearing tufts out in his fury, flinging them out on the wind, with the wind of spring Kuldahava. What to do, what course to follow? I had shoes of steel made for me, with strong laces made of copper, in which I lurked behind the walls, spying round the lane ends, till the madness should subside, and the madman settle down. But the madness does not quiet, nor the madman settle down. Then I felt the cold come on me, where I, the poor pariah, waited, standing there beside the wall, lingering there beside the door. There I wondered, thought it over. I'm not the sort to bear such malice from the holders of long hatreds, nor such high and mighty scorning in the fiendish lair of Limbo, in this den of devil's brood. So I left these charming hovels, left this darling dwelling place. I, the innocent, went wandering, roamed the fields, roamed the fens, over unknown waters travelled, wandered to my brother's field end. There the dry firs cuckooed at me, sang the bushy-headed pines, crows all cawed and magpies mocked. Here there is no home for you, nor your birthplace any longer. But I paid no heed to that, went on to my brother's dooryard. There the gates all creaked at me, all the meadows too protested. Why indeed do you come home? What is it you hope to hear? Long ago your father died, and your gentle mother too. Brother's a total stranger to you, and his wife is like a Russian. But again I did not heed it, and went straight up to the house. When my hand was on the latch, it was cold against my fingers. When I got into the house, there I halted in the doorway, proud the lady of the house, and she does not stir to greet me, nor to give her hand in welcome. Well, I also have my pride, make no motion to embrace her, nor to offer her my hand. Put my hand on the fireplace, on the stones, but they were cold. Lowered my hand down to the ashes, there the ashes too were cold. On the bench my brothers lolling, from the stove bench gawking, gaping. Soot a fathom on his shoulders, and a headspan on his body. Ell of ash upon his head, half a quart of hard-cast soot. Then my brother asked the stranger, inquired on the new arrival, from what place beyond the water does the stranger come to see us? In reply, I asked him simply, don't you know your own sister? Your own mother's own child? We're the children of one mother, nestled cradled by one bird, born as hatchlings of one goose, nestlings of the same ruffed goose. Then my brother broke out weeping, water streaming from his eyes. Said my brother to his wife, whispered softly to his sweetheart, bring refreshments for my sister. So my brother's bug-eyed woman brought me cabbage from the kitchen, cabbage stew but with no fat, for the pup had gulped the fat, and the dog had licked the salt. Blackie had his morning snack. Said my brother to his wife, whispered softly to his sweetness, bring the guest a drink of ale, but my brother's bug-eyed woman brought me nothing else but water. Even that was dirty water, where her sisters washed their faces, hand wash of my sisters-in-law. So I left my brother's house, left the house where I was born, started wretched on my wanderings, outcast on the wanderer's road. As an exile round strange shores, like a crippled beggar wandering, always at a stranger's door, at an unfamiliar gateway. Like poor children on a shore, paupers cared for by the village, there are many people now, very many of them now, who speak to me with angry voices, snap at me in irritation. Very few address me kindly, tell me with gentle mouth, come and warm you by the fire when I come in from the rain, from cowering in the cold outside, with my skirt hem ringed with rime, and my coat hem swirled with snow. I could never have believed, never in my younger years, even though 100 told me, or 1,000 tongues repeated, that I'd descend to these conditions, that I'd ever see such days as the days I suffer now, what lot has fallen to my hand. Runot 24, the teaching of the bridegroom. Now the bride had been advised, and the maiden well directed. I will speak now to my brother, to the bridegroom from my mouth. Bridegroom, you, my little brother, yet more precious than a brother, dearer than a mother's child, closer than a father's offspring. Listen as I speak to you, as I speak as I tell you, of your little linnet here, beautiful bird you have captured. Lucky bridegroom, thank you, fortune, for the good that you receive. In your thanking, thank it well. Good you got and good befell. Good the great Creator promised. Good the gracious God has given. Also give thanks to the Father, even more thanks to the Mother, who has cradled such a daughter, such a special bride for you. Pure the Virgin at your side, shining in your bridal gifts. Radiant one now in your power, graceful one now in your keeping. Capable the girl beside you, and so blushful as your partner. Lovely girl for any labor, at the threshing, at the haying. Able laundress, linen bleacher, skillful spinner, clever weaver. Like a cuckoo on a hill is the creaking of her batten. Swift as weasel through a woodpile is the swooping of her shuttle. With the bobbins spinning like a pine cone in a squirrel's mouth, neighbors do not sleep so soundly, nor the people of the manor, since the creaking of her batten and the whirring of her shuttle. Bridegroom, young man, handsome figure, forge yourself a scythe, a steel one, and affix a handle to it. Carve the handle in the gateway, whittling sitting on a stump. When the sunny days have come, take your sweetheart to the meadow. Notice how the hay is rustling, coarse hay creaking, sedges sighing, sorrel swishing, tussocks leveling, and observe the suckers snapping. When the right occasion comes, then bring her with a shuttle. Sturdy batten, fitting warp beam, carve out shapely, graceful treadles, all the markings of a loom. Sit her on the weaver's bench, with her batten in her hand. Then the creaking of the batten and the clatter of the loom will be heard by all the neighbors, and still farther through the village. Village women will be wondering, neighbor women will be asking, who is weaving cloth at this time? Properly enough you answer, oh, that's my darling weaving. My own sweetheart at her rattling. Does the cloth show any flaws? Are there any broken warp threads? In the cloth there are no flaws, and there are no broken warp threads. Flawless as the moon maid's weaving, or the spinning of the sun maid. Skillful as the great bear's daughter, as accomplished as the star maid. Bridegroom, young man, handsome figure, when you set out this journey, driving out away from here, driving with your youthful bride, with your lovely chick beside you, do not drive your little sparrow, little linnet off the road, at the corner of a fence, tip her over on a stump, stretched out on the stony ground. Never in her father's house and her tender mother's care was she driven off the road as the corner of a fence, or tipped over on a stump, overturned upon a rock pile. Bridegroom, young and handsome fellow, when you travel with your bride, when you take her on a visit, do not leave her in some corner, moping idly by herself. Never in her father's house, back then in her mother's chambers, was she left in any corner, moping idly by herself. She was always at the windows, or then tripping round the floor. Father's gladness in the evenings, mother's loved ones in the morning. You must never, you poor bridegroom, bring this chicken to the mortar, to prepare the famine bread, pounding bark and arum root, nor to bake her bread of straw, pounding straw the bark of pine. Never in her father's house, in her tender mother's care, was she set before a mortar, pounding bark and arum root, nor to bake her bread of straw, pounding small the bark of pine. Take the chicken to your grain store, let her load up at the rye bin, take her fill from bins of barley, for the baking of fat loaves, skillful brewing of sound ale, and to bake of wheaten loaves, so well kneaded, patted shapely. Bridegroom, brotherly companion, do not cause this chicken sorrow, do not make our little gosling ever weep in homesick grieving. Should an hour of grieving come, when she's longing for her home, put the brown horse in the shafts, or the white one into harness. Drive her to her father's house, to her gentle mother's home. Now this little chicken of yours, and our little linnet bird, never treat her as your serf girl, never as a hired servant. Do not bar the cellars to her, nor the riches of your storehouse. Never in her father's house, in her tender mother's home. Was she treated as a serf, dealt with as a servant girl. Never was the cellar barred, nor the riches of the storehouse. She always sliced the wheaten bread, and looked over all the hens' eggs, tubs of milk and butts of beer. Morning opened up the storerooms, evenings locking up the lofts. Bridegroom, young man, handsome figure, if you treat your lady kindly, it will all be to your credit. When you come to your father-in-laws, to your gracious mother-in-laws, you yourself will then be feasted, fed and feasted, tipsy, horses unharnessed and well stabled, given feed and given water, and the oat box set before it. Never say it of our maiden, of our little linnet birdling. Do not say that she is clanless, nor that she is wanting kinfolk, for in fact her clan is large, and her kinship very wide. If you sowed a peck of peas, they would be but one apiece. If you sowed a peck of flaxseed, each would be but one thread only. See you do not, you poor bridegroom, ever treat this maiden badly. Never teach her like a slave, never with a leather lash, never with the 5-thonged knout, nor make her weep out on the stairs. Never in her father's house, never before was the maiden taught with whip-strokes like a slave, never with a leather lash, never with a 5-thonged knout, nor made to weep out on the stairs. Stand before her like a wall, stay there upright like a doorpost. Do not let your mother strike her, nor the father-in-law berate her. Let no stranger treat her meanly, nor a neighbor dare abuse her. If the family says to whip her, others want her to be punished. You can't bear to whip your sweetheart, nor to punish your beloved. The long-desired one whom you won, after 3 long years of waiting, such a long time in your courting. Teach your girl, instruct your apple, teach her bridegroom in the bed, or behind the door correct her, for 1 year in each place, for a year by word of mouth, for the next by glance of eye, and the third by stamp of foot. If she still remains unheeding, and does not obey at all, get a fresh reed from the reed bed, stalk of horsetail from the heath, and instruct your woman with it. This way teach her in the 4th year. Tap her only lightly with it, with the reed edge barely touch her, but by all means do not whip her, do not lay a switch upon her. Only if she persist and does not obey at all, pull a switch up from a thicket, birch rod from a woodsy hollow, underneath your fur coat bring it, that the neighbors may know nothing. Show it to her, brandish it, but you must not strike her yet. If she still remains unheeding and does not obey at all, give her lessons with the switch, with a birchen branch correct her. Teach her in a room 4-cornered, where the chinks are caulked with mosses. Do not do it in the open, in a field or meadow whip her, lest the noise be heard by neighbors, ruckus reach another house. Woman's reaching reach the village, great commotion reach the forest. Always switch her on the shoulders and the softest flesh of her bottom. Do not strike her eyes or face. Do not touch her ears at all, lest a welt show on her forehead, black and blue above her eye. Then the brother-in-law would ask, and the father-in-law surmise. Neighboring plowmen too would see it, and the village women mock. Well has someone been to war, and had badly bruised in battle. Was she torn up by a wolf? clawed up by a forest bear? Or then is a wolf her sweetheart, or a bear her close companion? Spoke an old man from the stovetop, an old wandering beggar man. You must never, you poor bridegroom, heed a woman's whims and wishes. Women's wishes lack birds tittering, as I did, unhappy fellow. Brought the meat and brought the bread, bought the butter, bought the beer, bought her fish of every kind, delicacies of every sort, home-brewed ale, foreign wheat bread, but I got no good of it, not so much as decent manners when she came into the house. Came as if to tear my hair out, eyeballs rolling, making faces, hissing in her spitefulness, calling me a clumsy oaf and a low-down cordwood cutter. But a new trick I recalled, another way to deal with her. When I began to peel a birch rod, she caressed me as her birdling. When I cut a juniper top, yielded to me as her sweetheart. When I switched her with a willow, then she clambered on my neck. Here the poor bride gasped and sighed, broke out into sudden weeping, and expressed her feelings thus: Now the party's breaking up, soon the others will be going, sooner will my leaving come, and it draws on ever nearer. Though I'm laggard loath to leave here, oh, how hard the hour of parting, to depart from this dear village, from the charming home of mine, where I grew up innocently, grew up gently, kindly cared for, all the distance of my growth time, the whole period of my childhood. Never before did I imagine, never before could I believe, never ever think that I'd abandon, nor believe that I'd forsake, field and flower of this homestead, and the shoulders of this ridge. Now I know I must abandon, and believe that I must leave it. Nor the tankards have been emptied, and the farewell drinks all drunk. Soon the sleighs will face about, prows all outward, sterns all houseward, sidelong to my father's stable, slantwise to the cattle barn. With that now that I am leaving, going away from here, poor thing, shall I show my gratitude to my mother for her milk, to my father for his goodness, to my brother for his kindness, to my sister for her friendship? I give thanks to you, my father, for the meals and all the snacks, all the plenty you provided. I give thanks to you, my mother, for the cradling of your young one, for the fostering of the little one, for the feeding at your breast. I give thanks to you, my brother, both my brother and my sister. Thank you all my family, all the comrades of my growth time, in whose company I flourished, constant comrades of my childhood. May you not, my good father, may you not, my gentle mother, neither clan nor kin of ours, numerous and illustrious tribe, find a cause here for great grieving, where I go to other lands, travel off to unknown places. The Creator's sun shines elsewhere, the Creator's moon gleams golden, and the stars of heaven twinkle, and the brilliance of the bare stars lights up yonder skies as brightly, and far distant other places, not only on my father's acres, and the house where I was reared. Now I go as I must, from this house, precious home of mine, leave the house my father built, and my mother's plenteous cellar. Leave my marshes, leave my meadows, and my greensward all behind me. Leave my clear and sparkling waters, to abandon my sand beaches, to the village women's bathing, splashing hijinks of the herders. I forsake my fins to waiters, and my fields I leave to plotters. Alder thickets to reposers, leave the heather to the hikers. Fence-side pathways to the walkers, leave the lanes to passerby. And the barnyards to the runners. Walls for leaners, floors for cleaners and for sweepers. Leave the fields for running reindeer, backwoods to the wandering lynxes. Clearing for the geese to nest on, leafy bowers for birds to rest in. Now I go as I must, together with another goer, into the land of autumn night, over glassy springtime ice. Not that a trace is left, for a footprint at the gate, not the scrape of skirt or snow crust, not a hint of him of snow. But then, when I come again, visiting my home once more, mother will not hear me calling, nor my father heed my weeping, as I mourn above his brow and lament above his head. Now the new grass lifts already, and a juniper has risen on the flesh that suckled me, on the cheekbone of my bearer. So when I go back again to revisit this long farmyard, no one else will recognize me, no one here but these two objects. On the rail fence just a white tie, which I tied there as a child, and the last post of the fencing, which I set there as a girl. Then my mother's barren cow, which I watered as a youngster, tended when it was a calf, softly starts to moo at me. From the litter left by winter, from the winter feeding ground, she will still remember me as a daughter of the house. Then my father's good old stallion, which I tended as a youngster, fed when just a growing girl, softly starts to neigh at me. From the litter left by winter, from the winter feeding ground, he will still remember me as a daughter of the house. Then my brother's good old dog, which I cared for as a child, as a young girl taught new tricks, softly starts to bark at me. From the litter left by winter, from the winter feeding ground, he will still remember me as a daughter of the house. But the others will not know me when I go back to my home, though they are my old-time moorings, as they were when I lived there, whitefish sounds and seining grounds, and their old familiar places. Stay my cabin in good health, health beneath your roof of planking. It will be a pleasure for me to come visiting here again. Stay my porchway in good health, porchway with your floor of planking. It will be a pleasure for me to come visiting here again. Stay my farmyard in good health, health where holy rowans grow. It will be a pleasure for me to come visiting here again. Now I give you all good health, fields and forest with your berries, laneways with your flower-grown borders, and the heaths with purple heather, lakes with 100 islands dotted, whitefish sounds and fir-clad hillocks, backwoods hollows with your birch trees, and patience on the long farewells. Ilmarinen caught her up, set her in the waiting sleigh, switched the horse, and shouted gaily, "Fare you well, all you lake shores, shores of lakes and meadow borders, all you piney hillsides rising, with your groves of tall old pine trees, chokecherry clump behind the house, junipers along the well path, on the ground all berry bushes, stalks of straw, willow clumps and roots of fir, alder leaves and birch bark gleaming." So Smith Ilmarinen parted, left the yard of Pohjola, left the singing children there, children singing and reciting. Flew a blackbird here among us, flapping through the wilderness, lured away our little duckling, and enticed our berry from us, took away our apple from us, coaxed our pet fish from the water, cheated us with petty cash, fooled us with a bit of silver. Who will take us to the water, guide us to the river now? Now the water tubs stand empty, with the cowl staffs creaking idly. Floorboards will be left unscrubbed, and the floors remain unswept. Goblets will be streaked with grime, and the tankard handles tarnished. Ilmarinen with his bride sped along these northern shores, passing by the straits of mead, shoulders on the sandy ridges, shingle singing, sand dunes ringing, sleigh proceed, road whiz by, with the iron trace hooks creaking, and the birchen runners rasping, with the twisted shackles twittering, while the choked cherry shaft bows shivered, and the wide ties creaked complaining, with the copper fittings clinking. All the gallant racer ran, gallant white-blazed galloped homeward. Ilmarinen drove a day, drove a second and a third day. On hand holding to the reins, other arm around his bridge, one foot set upon the sleigh edge, one beneath the woolen robe. Ran the racer, journey quickened, day rolled by, the road was shortened, but at last upon the third day, as the golden sun was setting, they beheld the craftsman home. Ilma's buildings loomed before them. There a rope of soot was rising, and a flag of thick smoke flying, streaming skyward from the chimney, till it mingled with the clouds. Runot 25, The Homecoming. Long indeed the people waited, watching eagerly, for the bridal party's coming to the home of Ilmarinen. Eyes of elders ran with rheum, sitting staring out of windows. Knees of younger people weakened as they waited at the gateway, while the children's feet were freezing as they stood along the walls. Middle-agers ruined their shoes, trampling up and down the shore. Thereupon, a certain morning, after several days of waiting, a commotion through the woods, rush of runners on the heath. Then the courteous matron Locka, Kalevala's daughter, handsome hostess, gave the word that they were coming. It's my son's sleigh now approaching, coasting home from Pohjola, with his young bride by his side. He is near now to these acres, very close now to his homestead, to the house his father built him, which his parents well provided. It is Ilmarinen coming, almost at the home already, which his father furnished for him, and his parent well provided. On the shaft bows bent from saplings, hazel grouse all gaily whistling. On the ornamented sleigh prow, cuckoo bells are clearly calling. On the shafts of maple wood, playful squirrels are frolicking. Said the courteous matron Locka, Kalevala's daughter, handsome hostess, for a new moon the village waited, younger people for the sunrise, children for a field of strawberries, water for a tar-tight vessel. As for me, I was not waiting, even for half a moon here, nor for the rising of the sun. I was waiting for my son and daughter-in-law. Watching mornings, watching evenings, did not know where he had vanished. Was he wearing a little bride, or fattening up a lean one, since he has not come already, though he promised to return. While his sleigh ruts were still clear, long before the trail was cold, every morning I was watching, racked my mind throughout the days. If my son's sleigh were not coming, my son's sled not yet coasting, homeward to these puny acres, to this narrow home estate, where the stallion made of straw, and the sled had but two shackles, even that I'd call a sleigh, raise it to a basket sleigh, if it brought my dear boy to me, brought my handsome darling home. This I hoped for all my life, waiting, watching all my days, looked until my head was crooked, till my chignons stood up edgewise, and my straight eyes were asquint, hoped my dear son would be coming, homeward to these little fields, to this narrow home estate. Now at last he's really coming, and it indeed is now arriving, with a rosy form beside him, red-cheeked figure by his side. Bridegroom, my most precious one, loosen white blaze from its harness, lead the good horse to its fodder, to its own familiar manger, to its usual feed of oats. Come and greet us, everyone, health to us and to all others, and good health to all the village. After you have said your greetings, tell us everything that happened. Did you travel without trouble, with good health upon your journey, on your way to mother-in-law's, home of your good father-in-law? Did you get her win the power? Did you break the war gate down? Did you storm the maiden's castle? Stride across the matron's floor? Sit upon the master's bench? But I see that without asking, know it without further question, he has journeyed in good health, and has traveled without trouble. He has brought his gosling with him, and has won the mastery, broken down the barricade, overthrown the wooden castle, broken down the linden wall, when he went to his mother-in-law's, to the home of his father-in-law. Now the scop is in his care, little chicken in his arms, fair-skinned maiden by his side, shining beauty in his power. Who has brought this lie among us? Who has spread this evil gossip, that he's coming empty-handed, that the stallion ran for nothing? But he comes not empty-handed, nor did the stallion run for nothing. See there what he pulls behind him, what the flax-maned is hauling. In a sweat the good horse gallops, flecked with foam the chosen racer, bringing us the little pullet, bringing us the rosy bride. Get up from this sleigh now, lovely, get up, good gift from the long sleigh. Stand up in the sleigh unaided, get out without being lifted, though you have a youth to aid you, and a proud man who could lift you. When you get up from the sleigh, come down from the end of it. Step down on the dark brown pathway, on the liver-colored earth, smoothed and packed down by the swine, trodden by the little piglets, leveled by the little lambkins, brushed off by a horse's mane. Step out like a little gosling, patter like a little teal. On the sweep and level farmyard of your father-in-law's providing, furnished by your mother-in-law, on the brother-in-law's whittling yard, and the sister's flax-blue meadows. Set your foot upon the threshold, and go up the outer stairway, to the honey-fragrant entry, and from there step straight inside, underneath the honored roof-tree, underneath the splendid ceiling. It was only just last winter, even only just last summer, that the duck-bone floor was singing for her who would be standing on it, and the splendid ceiling murmured for her who was to walk beneath it, and the windows were rejoicing for her who was to sit beside them. It was only just this winter, even only just last winter, that the latches too were rattling for ringed fingers that would close them, and the door sills all were creaking, for her handsome him to brush them. All the doors were opening, impatient for their opener. It was only just this winter, even only just last summer, that the cabin spun around, waiting for its proper wiper. The entry, too, prepared itself to receive its proper cleaner. All the sheds were shouting out, also for their proper sweeper. It was only just this winter, even only just last summer, that the yard was looking around for the picker up at torch ends, at the storerooms leaning over, listening to their mistress's footsteps, rafters swayed and shelves bent down, waiting for the young wife's wardrobe. It was only just this winter, even only just last summer, that the laneways were lamenting, waiting for the one to walk them. Cattle sheds were coming nearer, waiting for the one to clean them. Cattle stalls were rearing back, waiting for the teal to tend them. It was only just yesterday, just today, even only yesterday, that the cow was mooing early, for the giver of the hay sheaf, while the young colts all were neighing, for the tosser of the hay sheaf, and the spring lamb bleating waiting, for the server of his tidbit. It was only just today, even only yesterday, that at the window sat the old folks. Children ran around the shores. Women stood along the walls, boys beside the entry doors, all expecting the young wife, waiting for the coming bride. Health now to your crowded yard, and to all the men outside. Hail your crowded outer stairs, and your guest-filled upper landing. Health be to your crowded entry, birch-bark roof with your people. Health be to your crowded cabin, 100-planker with your children. Hail the moon, hail the king, hail this youthful, brideful escort. There has not been here before, nor yesterday, anything like it for its splendor, or the beauty of these people. Come, good bridegroom, best of brothers, now take off her scarlet headbands, swish away her silken veils, show us now your little Martin, whom you wooed for 5 long years, and for 8 years you adored. Did you get the one you wanted? Went to get your little cuckoo? Got the choicest of in the land, and the fairest on the water? But I see that without asking, know it without further question, brought your little cuckoo with you, have the bluescap in your keeping, tenderest tip of youngest sapling, from the greenest of the greenwood, freshest of the leafy twigs, from the freshest chokecherry bush. Set a baby from the floor an infant mocking. Brother, what is that you're bringing? Handsome as a pitchy pine stump, no longer than a tub of tar, and no taller than a windle. Well, well, you unlucky bridegroom, this you hoped for all your lifetime, said you'd get one worth 100, bring a maiden worth 1,000. Now you've got one worth 1,000, but that hoyden worth 1,000? Got a curfew from the swamp, off the fence of Magpie Chaser. Got a scarecrow from the field, and a blackbird from a furrow. What now has she ever done? What, for instance, all last summer, since she's knitted not a mitten, nor begun a single stocking, come into this house with nothing, giftless to her father-in-laws, only mice with pricked up ears, listening in their birch basket. Then the courteous Mistress Loca, Kalava's daughter, handsome housewife, hearing the strange story, said, "What are you saying, naughty child, babbling about, you silly baby? Let wild tales be told of others. Let their scandals run like rumors, but not about this girl of ours, nor the people of this household. Now you told a bad story, and have sung a silly song, from a calf's mouth one night old, from a day-old puppy's head. For the girl my son has got is the choicest of the country, like a ripening whortleberry, like a strawberry on a hill, or a cuckoo on a treetop, little bird upon a rowan, pretty plume upon a birch tree, warbling white breast on a maple. Search the land of Germany, even far beyond Estonia, but you'll never find her equal, nor her match for gracefulness, nor the kindness of this duckling, nor the beauty of this blossom. No such stateliness of figure, no such whiteness of the arms, such an arch of slender neck. She did not come empty-handed. There were fur coats to be brought, blankets also to be got, and good broadcloth brought along. Much this maiden now brings with her. Many doings of her distaff, many spinnings of her spindle, finery fashioned by her fingers, garments white from winter washing, on a spring day bleached out white, dried out in the months of summer. Good homespun linen sheets, with some softly puffed up pillows, silken kerchiefs, woolen blankets. My good girl, fair young woman, woman with a rose complexion, well regarded as a daughter, daughter in your father's house. You will be as well regarded in the home of your dear husband. Don't begin to worry now, nor concern yourself with cares. You weren't brought into a swamp, taken to a dirty ditch bank. You've been brought from good to better, from stores of grain to greater ones, from a house well stocked with ale to a house supplied with more. My good girl, fair young woman, let me simply ask you this. Did you see as you were coming rounded ricks and high heaped hurdles? All are entirely of this manner, all of them your husband's work. From the ploughing of your bridegroom, from his ploughing and his sowing. My good girl, fair young woman, this is what I want to tell you. Since you chose to join this household, make your mind up to stay in it, for a young bride's life is good here, for a daughter-in-law to thrive in. Tubs of clabber in your care, bowls of butter in your charge. Here's a good place for a girl, for a little chick to thrive in. Broad the platforms of the sauna, wide the benches in the cabin, and the master's like your father, and the mistress like your mother. All the boys will be your brothers, and the daughters as your sisters. Should you ever get a longing, have a hunger for old home fare, such as fish your father caught, or the goose your brother snared, do not ask your brother-in-law, nor entreat your sister-in-law. Ask your sweetheart straight and simply. Do your business with your bringer. There is no beast in the forest, not a single 4-foot runner, not a single bird of air soaring on a pair of wings, not even yet in the waters, and the best of shoaling fishes, that your getter cannot get you. Getter get, or bringer bring. Here's a good place for a girl, for a little chick to thrive in. There's no hurrying to the handmill, nor concern about the mortar. Here the river grinds the wheat, and the rapids mill the rye. Wave-washed are the wooden dishes, and the sea foam does the whitening. Oh, this dear, this precious village, best in all the land for me. Meadows lower, plowland higher, and the village in between. Down below the pleasant shore, near the shore on calming water, mallards swimming, seabirds sporting. Then the drinks were passed around, all the guests were fed and toasted, with heaps of extra buns and sweetmeats, pudding, bread, and barley beer, and fermented wheat-wort liquor. There was roasted meat in plenty, heaps of food and drink abundant, in-red trenchers, lovely platters, crusty pasties, buttered bread, whitefish cutlets, salmon slices, cut and sliced with silver knives, and with golden sheath knives gleaming. Gratis everywhere was given, cost was never been counted. Freely flowed the beer and mead, ran out from the inns of raptors. Wall pegs spouted out like spigots, beer for mouthwash, mead for cheering. Who is there to be our cuckoo, singer suited to the station, Vanamoinen, ageless singer, undertook the runo making, introduced the runo singing, said this word, spoke this sentence. My good friend and brothers all, mutual speakers mouth to mouth, conversing comrades face to face, hear and heed the words I'm saying. Far apart our homes are scattered, geese are seldom beak to beak, sisters seldom face to face, brothers seldom side by side, mothers, children, rarely neighbors in these ragged border regions, these benighted northern marches. So now shall we start our singing, and commence composing verses, making songs is work for singers, as is calling for the cuckoos, dyeing blue for blue-woad spirits, weaving to the weaver's spirits. Even Lapland children sing, and their hay-stuffed shoes are chanting, on infrequent elk flesh feasting, on the rare ribs of the reindeer. Why should I not sing as well? Why should I not our children sing? Robust on a diet of rye bread, from a mouth well breakfasted. Yes, indeed, the Laps are singing, even all those hay-shoes chanting, drinking from their mugs of water, biting on their bread of pine bark. Why should I not sing as well? Why should not our children sing? Drinking green fermented liquor, rejoicing with their barley beer. Yes, indeed, the Laps are singing, even all those hay-shoes chanting, round their sooty open campfires and their cindery night camps chanting. Why should I not sing as well? Why should not our children chant, safe beneath this solid roof tree, underneath a splendid ceiling? Here's a good place for the menfolk, pleasant too for womenfolk, with butts of beer and tons of mead. Whitefish in the sound beside us, salmon ready for our seining, whence our food is never lacking and our drink is never ending. Here's a good place for the menfolk, pleasant too for womenfolk. Here we do not eat in sorrow, not oppressed with anxious cares. Here we eat with minds unworried, and with spirits free of sorrow. While the master here is living, and the hostess still is with us. In what order shall I thank them? First the master or the mistress? Always in the olden times, singers thanked the master first. He it was who pioneered, turned a swamp into a homestead, built a good home in the forest. First he cut down old pine trees, which he trimmed from butt to tip, set them on a fitting site, fixed them firmly, built them stoutly, as a great house for the clan. And a splendid family homestead, shaped the wall logs from the backwoods, stringers cut from fearful cliff, rafters from the stony scrabble, roof poles from a berry pasture, birch bark down from cherry hill, moss for caulking from the marshes. So the house was well constructed, firmly fixed on good foundations. 100 helpers at its raising, and 1,000 at its roofing, at the making of the big house, at the laying of its floor. When the present master here was constructing this great manor, many a storm wind whipped his hair, much hard weather he endured. Often were the good man's mittens frozen solid to a stone, hat left hanging on a fir bough, stockings sucked down in a bog hole. Many a time this good master, very early at the dawning, long before the others wakened, with no single neighbor hearing, has awakened at his campfire, risen from his bed of fir boughs. Many a fir sprig brushed his hair, while his eyes were washed with dew. That is why then our good master now receives his comrades here. Benches full of friendly singers, windows crowded with rejoicers, floors with wizards, wily warlocks, chimney corners with great chanters, Many standers by the wall sides, fenceways full of travelers, and the yards with lookers on. Now that I have thanked the master, I will thank our generous hostess for the feast she has provided, sumptuous table set before us. She has baked the great fat loaves, made big buns of barley mush, molded with her ready palms and the curve of her 10 fingers. Served the meal most courteously, fed the guests most copiously, high heaped portions of roast pork and fish pasties crumbled, crusted, till our busy knife blades loosened from the handles of our sheath knives. As we hacked the salmon heads and we split the pike heads neatly, often was our courteous hostess, careful housewife, risen early, long before she heard the cock crow, heard a sound from Chanticleer, hurrying to prepare this banquet, bustling at her various chores, busy with handling of the hops and the brewing of the beer. Well, indeed, now has our hostess, careful housewife, brewed the beer, brewed the malted beverage nicely from the sweetened barley sprouts, did not stir them with a stick, did not turn them with a cowl staff. Only with her hands she raised them, with her arms she turned them over, in the sauna clear of smoke, and the platform cleanly swept. That good mistress, careful housewife, never allowed the sprouts to spoil, never let them clot together, nor drop them down upon the ground. And she checked the sauna often, all alone at dead of night, with no fear about the wolves or the wild beasts of the forest. Having thanked our courteous hostess, let me thank the speaker now, who is chosen as our speaker and is honored as our leaders. Good luck, best of village speakers, has been chosen as our leader. Look how dressed up is our leader, in a coat of foreign broadcloth. It is tight around the armpits, very narrow around his belly. Look how our distinguished leader wears a very stylish caftan, though the hem sweeps up the sand and the tails drag on the ground. Just a bit of shirt is showing, tiny piece is peeping out, as if woven by the moon maid or a tinny-breasted maiden. Look how our distinguished speaker wears a stylish belt of woolen, as if woolen by the sun maid, embroidered by some pretty fingers. At some far-off fireless age, time when fire was quite unknown, look how our distinguished leader wears a pair of silken stockings with a pair of silken garters, satin laces on his shanks woven out of golden yarn, interlaced with silver threading. Look at our distinguished leader wearing decent Dutchman's shoes, like 2 swans upon the river or 2 pigeons on the bank. Brace of geese upon a fir bough, birds of passage on a brush heap. Look at our distinguished leader showing off his golden ringlets. Oh, my voice is starting to hurt. With his long beard neatly braided, on his head a high-peaked hat, poking right up through the clouds, glimmering there above the forest, a hat not to be bought for hundreds, no, not for 1,000 marks, our distinguished leader let me thank the maid of honor. Where now did we get this woman, choose this lucky maid of honor? This is where we got the lucky, where we took our maid of honor, far beyond the port of Tallinn, outside the fort of Novgorod. No, she did not come from there, not at all by any means. This is where we got the lucky, where we found our maid of honor. From the Dvina's high headwaters, from the open white sea waters. Neither did she come from there, surely not from there, our chosen. In a meadow grew a strawberry, dark red cowberry on a heath, and a field a handsome hay bloom, golden flower in a clearing. That is where this lucky comes from, where we took the maid of honor. The maid of honor's lovely mouth curves like a Finnish weaver's shuttle. The maid of honor's lively eyes twinkle like the stars of heaven. The maid of honor's far famed brows shine like moonlight on the ocean. Round our maid of honor's neck, golden necklaces are gleaming. Golden spangles in her hair, golden bracelets on her arms, rings of gold upon her fingers, golden eardrops in her ears, golden fillet on her forehead, muscle pearls upon her eyebrows. I thought the golden moon was gleaming from the glimmer of her breastpin, though it was the glow of daybreak when I saw her golden collar. Thought it was a bright sail coming when I saw her headdress gleaming. Having thanked the maid of honor, let me look the whole crowd over to see if all the throng is thriving. Older people still in health, younger people lithe and lively. Overall, a merry party. I have looked the whole crowd over, though I knew it well already. There has never been before, now ever may be again, as merry a company as this, such a handsome crowd of people, no sturdier group of older people, nor a handsomer lot of young ones. All are dressed in light gray coating, like a forest hung with hoarfrost. Below is like the dusk of dawn, above is like the morning glow. Gold was loose and free was silver with these parting wedding guests, purses scattered all around, wallets even in the lanes. Given for the great occasion for the honor of the party, old reliable Vanimoinen, eternal prop of minstrelsy, took his leave now of the party, driving homeward in his sleigh, chanting spells and incantations, singing on his way. Sang a song and sang a second, but upon the third it happened. Runner cracked upon a rock, shackle struck upon a stump. So the poet's sleigh was broken, and the slinger's runner cracked. As the shackle broke away and the sides collapsed completely, said the staunch old Vanimoinen, "Is there anyone here among you, one among the younger people and the growing generation, one among the older people of the dwindling generation, who would dare go to Tuoni, to the caverns of the dead, for a gimlet from Gim Tuoni, auger from the underearth, so that I can make a new one or repair the sleigh that's broken?" Said the young ones all together, and the elders also joined them. There are none among the young ones, nor among the elders either, no one in this whole great clan, not one with the awesome daring to descend to Tuonela, to the caverns of the dead, for a gimlet from Grimm Tuoni, auger from the underearth, so that you can make a new one or repair the sleigh that's broken. Then the staunch old Vanimoinen, singer eternal, went to Tuoni a second time to Tuonela, to the caverns of the dead. Got the gimlet from Grimm Tuoni, auger from the underearth. Then old Vanimoinen chanted, sang a woodland hazy blue, sang an oak and rowan there, straight-grained oak and holy rowan. Built a new sleigh out of these, built them into better runners, shaped them into shackle stakes, shaped and bent them into shaft bows. Soon he had his new sleigh finished, all the parts as sound as ever. Then he harnessed up the colt, hitched the brown horse up to the sleigh, took his seat and settled down, unstruck by lash or beaded whip, ran the racer for his breakfast, his accustomed grits and mash, bringing Vanimoinen home, to his door his own threshold. I got to admit, this story is an interesting one, and now we're halfway through the story, and I know that a lot of the later stuff is gonna be really interesting. I got to admit, though, I'm not sure if I can keep on reading such like big passages at a time like that. I might have to break it down into smaller readings just because my voice is really starting to hurt now. That was an interesting part of the story. A bit strange at parts. But it sets up stuff for later. I know that at least. And I gotta admit, it's just interesting reading through these stories. I hope that you all enjoy. And I will be back in due time, not just for this, but hopefully for all sorts of other great things. I want to thank you all for sticking around. And simple truth is, even if no one was around, I would keep on playing games and reading stories because it's just what I enjoy. If you liked what you saw, stick around, Like and subscribe, leave a comment. It really helps me out. For now, though, I'm going to rest up a little bit. I'll probably make something else in a bit or so. But I'm going to wait for my throat to not hurt so much.